is just a huge honor today to be in the podcast studio with Dr. Paul Allen Springs, DMD. Let me read his bio. This is going to be fun today. He's a graduate from Rutgers, New Jersey School of Dental Medicine. They had a name change. That's been a very confusing thing for old guys like me. He went on to a general practice residency at Coler-Goldwater Specialty Hospital, developing proficiency around medical and cognitive special needs, as well as a true appreciation for challenges facing institutional patients and providers. While training at Bellevue Hospital, his pursuit of comprehensive treatment planning and complex prosthetic rehabilitation continued, particularly with planning, placement, and restoration of dental implants. As a general dentist, he was active in the Queens County Dental Society and the Academy of General Dentistry, where he developed a commitment to excellence through lifelong advanced education. As an attending faculty member of Luther Memorial Hospital School Health Program, he was immersed for the first time in day-to-day problems of public health and the solutions possible in one-on-one treatment and education paradigm. Paul counts himself fortunate to be in a prosthodontic specialty residency based in daily mentored clinical practice at Monte Medical Center in Bronx. Within specialty practice, he loves providing life-changing treatments, discovering new techniques to improve predictability, and innovating materials and methods from other fields to provide patients with outcomes that were previously impossible. I really am glad that you specialize, because you can't deny the historical trend that from 1900 to 2000, 1900, so healthcare is not even 1% of GDP. There's no specialties. At the end of the century, it's 14% of GDP. Now it's 17%. The physicians have 58 specialties. We just added one. Now we're up to 10. Mm-hmm. But you still have these kids coming out and saying, I'm going to master endo and silver diamine fluoride pediatrics, and I'm going to learn how to place implants, really, with a sinus lift and bone grafting, really all that, and then restore, and then jump over here and do veneers and cosmetic dentistry and join the AACD, and they're going to learn Invisalign. And would you like to go to that, doctor?
In retrospect, I wouldn't. For many years, for several years, I wanted to be that doctor, and I think you can see it from my bio. Kind of went here and there, kind of wanted to pick and choose. Oh, I learned something here, something there, and I was convinced, and I think it's unfortunately the fallacy of the digital age that people think, oh, you don't have to learn it hands-on. I'll see it on Facebook. I'll do it the next day. And, unfortunately, it's human experimentation in many cases. But I went there. I did that. I found out. I hit my head against the wall a few times. And I realized you're only as good as your mentors. And unfortunately, you have to learn these things the right way. And it's not even about, being in the right place and doing the right things. It's more than anything, it's having patients coming in with the expectation that I'm going to get this significant treatment. They've already been to the other places. They already know you're the most competent person that can do it for what they're willing to spend, which is a lot of times what it comes down to. And then just taking it from there, having the expectation and having someone standing over your shoulder saying, there's a landmine to your right, step to the left. And, that's what I try to do with a lot of my friends. I get these text messages that say, oh, this lady agreed to a full mouth rehab. Now what? Where do I start? Where do I finish? And where's it going to go? So.
Yeah, the funniest guy in my dental school class was Barry Polinsky. And when he told me he was going to become an endodontist, I said, really? I didn't know in our discussions that you loved root canals the most. He says, I don't. I just don't want to learn every damn subject from A to Z. And that was probably the most profound thing I heard in dental school. And I didn't even realize what he said for a decade. And man, God, just staying on top of endo. I mean, they're using microscopes. I was in Israel lecturing, and this guy was showing me this new technique to actually wash out the inside instead of the mechanical filing.
Well, the gentle wave, the sonendo.
Yeah, he was showing me, and that sonendo is one way, and I've seen 3 different versions of that prototype out there, and he was showing me a way that just cleans it out like a washing machine vacuum thing, and I signed an NDA. I can't say much more than that, other than I hate lawyers. And but the bottom line is, it's everything. You got to stay on top of just a root canal. Well, and how are you going to do everything?
But, on the other hand, it's a balance we all have to strike. I think one of the greatest things about dentistry is it's a lifelong process. Even if I was to try to learn everything that's current today, it would take the rest of my career to do that. But it's ever evolving, as we know, and there are hundreds of journals and everything else. Endo is a perfect example. There's a lot of studies out there that are showing that people with what we would traditionally call irreversible pulpitis are being treated, managed for 5 years plus with no abscesses, maintaining vitality, doing adult pulpotomies, and immediate restorations of the teeth. You know, and endo, I think, is ripe for some major paradigm shifts for sure. And these are studies that have been around for 5 years with 5-year follow-up, but you don't really hear about them. And I think it's largely because everyone's learned what they've learned. Endo is what it is, and no one but the patients, unfortunately, benefits from doing something simpler, or as you would say, faster, cheaper, higher quality. Unfortunately.
So out of 10 specialties, what made you look at prosthodontics? And there might be some, but a quarter of our viewers are still in school. Why did you look at prosto instead of pedo? You know you wanted a screaming kid. 10 of them at the same time. I just want to be in a screaming room. I'd be a pedodontist if all the kids were in one op screaming at the same time.
Well, I'm the youngest in my family. So I don't have a lot of experience.
Youngest of how many?
Youngest of 3.
So you were the screamer.
I was the screaming child, exactly. I'm not prepared to handle that. Actually, it's funny. I'm here, like I was telling you, I'm here visiting my family. My parents and my sister are out here, and I was talking to my brother, and he said, where do you have to go? I said, I'm actually going to be on a podcast. He's a comedian. He listens to a ton of podcasts that are comedy and music. He has a radio show also, the Marcus Springs Show, if anyone's interested in eclectic music. But he said, you're going to be on a podcast? And I said, yeah, it's a dental podcast. You've never heard of it. He said, oh, what's it called? Wait, don't hurt me. But
now I want to meet your brother. I want to have a beer with your brother sometime.
He is a good man.
So what would you, so the reasons to specialize are just obvious. I mean, there's so many of them. Number one, look at a DSO here. And Arizona is ground zero for DSOs, the highest penetration at 18.6%, because any dentist that's licensed in any state can move here and do dentistry. You don't have to jump through all those regulatory hurdles. But when we look at specialty data, you know, the average net income for dentists, specialists are 320, general dentists 197. So you make $100,000 a year more. Dentists who own their practice make $244. If you're an employee, $147. So owner operators make $100 more. But blood, oral surgeons make the most, $450. Then periodontists $330. Endo $307. Pediatric dentists $304,000. You just make more money if you specialize. So then that specialist comes in my office and does a root canal. If I bill it, I do it. They'll give me maybe $650. But if the endodontist does it, they'll give him $1,200.
Right.
That's double.
Right.
So paying a general dentist 25% to do the root canal is you actually make more net income paying a specialist 50%. Because remember, we're not talking about percentage, we're talking about total profit dollars. So the DSOs can make more total profit dollars with insurance companies. So congratulations on seeing the wisdom in specializing.
Thank you.
And treat other people like you want to be treated. If I had to have a operation, say something's wrong with my eye, I wouldn't want to go to an ear doctor. I'd want to go to just a guy who does eyes, you know? But why did you pick prosto instead of perio, endo, pediatric?
There's a long answer and there's a short answer. The short answer is someone I really respect basically pointed out to me the way it could be done, that I could be in a paid residency. That makes a huge difference, right? Because we all have our school debt. I'm fairly fortunate that mine's pretty low, and I had already been paying it down for about 5 years when I decided to go into specialty treatment.
Your brother's
training.
Podcast paid for those.
No, as far as I know, he's still not getting paid for that I know about. But what it comes down to more than anything is clinical advantage. Like you said, it's treating others how I would want to be treated. There were enough treatments when I was a general dentist where I said, yeah, I think that'll work. This is pretty much what we talked about in school. Yeah, I think that ought to work. But what I learned, that the funny thing is, I went into the residency thinking it was going to be about improving my skill set. And to an extent it was. But mostly it was doing more and different forms of things I already knew how to do. More than anything, it was a change of mindset. And, a lot of it is having the time to have conversations with patients that avoid the problems going forward. So many of the misunderstandings and problems we have with patients are because we didn't have a chance to find out what really matters to them and what they're really looking to achieve, and whether what they're looking to achieve is even possible or reasonable. in my experience, specialists have the ability, even if they choose not to take it, they have the ability to take their time a little more to have those conversations and to have the diagnostic knowledge, because let's face it, that's the hardest part and most important part, to know before you go that I'm not going to, have unintended outcomes that I don't expect here. So for me, it was all about having, anyone who tells you they have a crystal ball is a liar. And I tell that to patients all the time because they come in for second opinions and consults. Anyone who tells you they have a crystal ball is a liar, but the more you know, the antidote to that fear is more knowledge. And so that's what it's always been for me.
Ryan and I actually know a girl that has a crystal ball. We do.
Yeah, I do too, but it's cloudy.
Believes it. So to the kids out there, channel conflict is like, let's say I was Chuck Cohen and Rick Cohen, the Benko brothers, and say I asked them on the show, saying, what's your favorite laser? Well, they don't want to say anything because they might carry 5 lasers and be friends with all 5 of them and wine and dine with them and all that kind of stuff like that.
Sure.
But prosthodontists have a lot of channel conflict, because I know some prosthodontists who tell me they've always wanted to get into implants, but they'd lose all their referrals from the periodontist, the oral surgeon. And I was wondering, your modern day prosthodontist. So when I got out of school, the pediatric dentist got all their referrals from general dentist. Mm-hmm. And so they only got the kid who has already been scared. He's older, he's crying, and it worked out terribly bad. And the smart one said, I don't want to wait till they're 5 or 6 and get the bad one. So they transferred from the general dentist to the pediatrician and started putting all their focus on the pediatrician to get this kid for his first appointment. And they don't even want to market to general dentists. There's not a pediatrician in Phoenix, Arizona that wants to be your A-list for your screaming 7-year-old who's not compliant, who's already been ruined and scared. Mm-hmm. Prosthodontists, they're very confused. They're like, I want to place implants, but I don't want to because I don't want to lose my referrals. Are prosthodontists getting most of their referrals from periodontists, oral surgeons, general dentists, or B2C public patients?
Well, I'm sure you've never asked a question that complex to a prosthodontist and not gotten the same answer. It depends. But it's all a matter of practice setup, and referral patterns within your area. I love placing implants. That's my favorite part of dentistry. Planning, placing, restoring implants, start to finish. That's what I love. If my schedule was all that every day.
If you truly loved it, then don't tell me to have an online CE course from you for an hour. Planning, placing. Well,
we have a title, so there we go.
You have a title? What's the title called?
Planning, placing, and restoring implants.
You actually have a better title that you sent me that I just loved it. I always say, we do 3 things: perio, cario, and occlusion doesn't rhyme. And you emailed me, my favorite listener says, how about cario, perio, and lateral pterio?
Yeah, it doesn't roll off the tongue, but at
that's
least it
pretty,
fits the bill.
How about do you think it should just be cario, perio, and pterio?
Yeah, I don't even say the P. I don't speak Greek, even though I'm in the specialty that no one knows.
Is the P silent?
I don't say pterodactyl. I don't know. Although this could go on a long conversation. I was a linguistics major, so this.
Were you really?
I was, yeah.
Wow. So I'm just gonna. And so do I have to credit you every time I say cario, perio, and lateral pterio?
I'd just say, how about cario, perio, and terio? Then again, that's going to confuse people.
Oh, it's got to be yeah. I don't know, but that was genius.
Good. I'm glad
so, but what was the title you were going for?
Oh, well, you said the one that came up organically. Planning, placing, and restoring dental implants start to finish.
It's kind of restoring dental implants, start to finish. You should do that. And I think it's interesting because I lived through the implant thing. So when Brandmark first came over here, he would only lecture oral surgeons. Mm-hmm. And then history repeats itself. When Invisalign came out, they would only talk to orthodontists. We're always the little guy, that has to sue our way to the dinner table.
Now only the patient can do clear aligners.
Yeah. The patient got to do it before the general dentist could. And but the greatest implantologist that I ever met was the Carl Misch, and he started out as a prosthodont, removable prost. Mm-hmm. And the only reason he got interested in implants is because he was so frustrated that people were having these implant hater bars snap
Mhm.
and blame it on the implant manufacturer. And he's looking at this non-working bite, and he said he got into implants because all the people that were in implants did not know how to take a bite and did
Right.
not know removable. And then the biggest lab in dentistry, where 50% of all the dentists will send something once a year to Jim Glidewell,
Sure.
and 7% send him everything. They eventually chose not to go in to implants because it was being taught to the oral surgeons, and the oral surgeons were teaching it, and he was getting cases in from the instructors, and these implants going 5 different ways. And
Sure.
Jim said, "Oh my God, this is insane."
Right.
So he just redlined it, and it wouldn't be until periodontists and general dentists got in that actually started making, designing this from the crown down,
Sure.
that Glidewell actually got back into the deal. So I want to come back to, well, we'll just stay there for a second. I always wonder though, when it comes to cario, perio, and pterio, it seems like you can really transfer knowledge fast and easy about caries and perio,
Mhm.
but it seems like the transfer of knowledge of occlusion is it doesn't seem to flow like cario and perio. Why is pterio?
I think all of them you can easily go, to the surface on a fairly superficial level. Um, but you can understand it, but doing something about it is different, right? Modifying patients' behavior is pretty much what the first two come down to. The third one, maybe also. I mean, when it comes to occlusion, no one disputes, no matter what camp you're in. There's a genius quote. I want to say it was L.D. Pankey. All that occlusion is simultaneous contacts of all the teeth, heavier in the back than in the front, and the front teeth separate the back teeth. That's it. Superficially, that's true. Or as I say when I want to piss off my occlusion instructor, oh, occlusion, it's easy. Dots in the back, lines in the front. That's all you got to know. But the fact is, to actually to look at a given situation and say, why did this person get how they are? How can we put them in a position where they'll hopefully destroy themselves a little more slowly? That's a long conversation for many bottles of tequila. But when it comes to the idea of actually modifying patient behavior, I don't know anybody that can do it. You see people that stand up on the podium and say, "Oh, after I rebuild their bite, they never grind their teeth down again." Really? So you're just better than God. That's what it is. Enough ego and it'll work. For me, in my hands, it doesn't work. I'm involved in a cool pilot study right now where a couple of the oral surgeons at Monte, they published something that was in JADA a few years ago as a protocol for Botox in the masseters and the temporalis. Again, not Greek. I don't know how to pluralize temporalis. But what they're looking at now is the change in bite force after that. And I think something like that, even if it's as a means of biofeedback to help people understand that really the pressure they're putting on their teeth is way too much. I will often talk to patients and say, when they have clear signs of bruxism, I'll speak to them and say, how much time do you think the average person spends with their teeth together? And they start thinking about it, and you see their masseters flexing as they're thinking about it. And they'll say, I don't know, half the day. I'll say, actually, the normal person spends 1% of the day and night together with their teeth in contact. And you see these looks on their face. Now, am I vain enough to believe it's going to change their behavior? No. But I think just like, we've all had that patient who they felt the difference once you scaled off the tartar and they said, oh, now I understand, and, kind of turned their behavior around. I do have patients who now say, everyone's had the experience of someone who says, no, I don't grind my teeth. No. And you kind of say, well, shit, somebody is. If it's not you, it's somebody. And then they come back a month or two later and they say, I realize I am squeezing my teeth together. I think that awareness and feedback is the first thing that's necessary to change people's habits.
TechScan is a company that started out in dental and it's MIT, and now they got 100 engineers and they're pressure mapping and all that stuff. And that's East Coast. And then on the West Coast, you got Align Technology, which owns iTero and Invisalign.
Mm-hmm.
And now they have millions of scans. And it's kind of like going forward, it's like someday those two people will have to get married, won't they? back to cario, perio, lateral to care. Caries. I take X-ray. I can see interproximal cavities. I mean, I can't on mine. Mine of all have cone cuts, but I mean, theoretically, you could see caries. You can see bone loss for perio, but you can't really see occlusion on a radiograph, which I'm now hearing by a bunch of people who signed NDAs. They can't say anything. That basically line technology thinks they're going to get some occlusion measurements. But those people would say, man, it'd be nice if they also had the tech scan stuff.
Get all the data sets together.
But when you go into occlusion, the old school guys like Pankey, Dawson, things like that, they were never big tech scan people. That was the neuromuscular people. You're a prosthodontist. You guys take that occlusion more serious than a silent P. Did you ever, what are your thoughts on tech scan?
I wish I knew more about it. There was a recent article from the Journal of Prosthodontics that looked at it, and they did find some clinical value to it for sure. I think to me it comes down to, again, I think a very useful product, but you can sell 10,000 of anything to dentists if you promise it's going to make their job easier and do it for them, right? That's true of anybody, but dentists especially.
1,000.
Okay.
The $50,000 YAG laser is a classic example. They came out as $50,000, sold 1,000, then went bankrupt. And I've seen so many times a big machine, 50,000. You think $50,000? The same skills that got you to learn the difference between a cosine and a tangent would kick in, and you would solve that equation and not buy it. But yeah, you can sell 1,000 of anything to a dentist.
Different kind of cosine in that equation. Actually. But is it valuable? Absolutely. Do I know enough about it to say yes or no whether I think it's worth I don't even know what they charge for it. But I think taking your time and, sometimes the oldest ways are the best. And it's simple, a little bite wax, a little articulation paper. You can really see what you need to see. Granted, it doesn't give you the timing, and that's true. If you wanted to, plan some amazing precision disclusion that was progressing off of canines and premolars and off into the sunset, then maybe that's useful. I haven't seen the need for it. When people have healthy, natural canines, I rarely see a reason to put them in anything other than canine disclusion. Personally, that's in my limited experience.
Well, let's not get personal. We're not even drinking. So if we said dentistry 3 diseases, what letter grade would you give the current 2020 America, 211,000 licensed dentists treating 331 million people? What overall letter grade would you give for the treatment of caries versus perio versus occlusion?
Well, again, I think for a given instance of a given carious process, we have the prescription, right? You cut it out and you fill it up. We can do that. Changing the behavior, that's a different question. Honestly,
changing the behavior being perio?
Well, even caries, right? Even the diet. I mean, again, there are some people that they just need the information, and it's sad to me how many patients I've treated who really did turn it around because no one ever told them, when you drink sugar, you're bathing your teeth in sugar. It's in a place you can't reach it. You gotta floss. You gotta solve these problems. I try to distill things down for patients and say, all of your problems are solved by floss. I was the kid who I never had a single cavity. My mom's a dietitian. Till I was 19, I'd been hanging out with a kid who always had Mr. Pibb in the fridge. And for 3 years, I was drinking it all day. I had 11 interproximal lesions the next year, So it happens. And sometimes
that's
people...
weird because that Mr. Pibb, you should have drank Dr. Pepper.
Obviously.
The doctor would have done that too. You went with the Mr., an unlicensed dental therapist.
It's true. No, please, talk about a can of worms. Oh, man.
Mr. Pibb is the unlicensed dental therapist. Dr. Pepper is the real one. If you want 11 interproximal cavities.
That's interesting history because all those old soda brands all started off as patent medicines.
Right.
Dr. Pepper was, based on Vin Mariani, this Italian... fortified wine with cocaine drink. So there you go.
And the graham cracker was for acid reflux and ingestion things. And I swear to God, if you drink too much, if you eat some graham crackers,
Really?
Dr. Graham.
Whether you believe it works or not,
So,
you're
so
right.
back to letter grade. So caries, you got
Yeah.
holes, you drill them out, you fill them.
We
Perio,
can
change
do
your
that without a
behavior.
problem. I'd say it's an A. Perio,
You
again,
cario, you give an A.
yeah, I would give it an A as far as the practitioner solving the problem today, right? We can do that today. Again, changing the behavior, altering the biofilm, that's a complex topic that, there are a lot of experts that have no idea on that. As far as perio, I think we get even deeper into the weeds. We're talking about, anaerobic pathogens that are not ever seeing the light of day, unfortunately, in a lot of these situations. And patient predispositions we just can't modify. That's tough. And I don't think it's so much a failing of dentistry, even though there are a lot of practitioners that find it more convenient to just do the bloody prophy and not really talk about it. I think that's partly due to, influence of the third-party payer system and that sort of thing. But I think we can do, as far as treating it, we can do a pretty good job. The average dentist at least knows how to do it, even if they don't always. I was amazed, though. There's a study that showed they gave hygienists unlimited time to scale one tooth, the pocket on one tooth. Unlimited time until they were sure that root surface was totally clean. There wasn't a single tooth where there was nothing beyond 4 millimeters. So 4 millimeters is pretty much the mark of how far you can scale without a flap, or maybe laser or some other adjunct I'm not knowledgeable enough to know about. But so, not everyone is referring those pockets that can't possibly be cleaned that are, that are recalcitrant to treatment. So I would still give that probably a B.
Do you like that little? There's a company in Scottsdale makes a little flashlight intraoral camera that goes sub G for the scaling.
Oh, like a periscope, that type of thing?
That's right here in Scottsdale.
Oh, I didn't know that. I have no experience with it.
Where else would you start a perio company than Scottsdale? I mean, it's a city of bleeding gums.
That sounds about right. Yeah, that's what most livable city means. Yeah, but again, we know how to solve it, and that's more of a question of patient compliance than anything, I would say. Because how many people have you had say, "Oh yeah, the periodontist flapped this side and cleaned it out, and it was the worst experience of my life. I'm supposed to do this side, but there's no way."
That always reminds me of a study they would always. I went to UMKC, and Dr. Charles Cobb was an amazing periodontist, still is, and very outspoken on dental lasers. So outspoken, he won't even come on this show and talk about it because every time he writes an article on dental lasers, he gets so much flack and emails, and he just doesn't even want to deal with it. But he used to always show us a study of where people got their root planing curettage on the right side and didn't get it done on the left side and didn't change their behavior. And 3 years later, there was no change in anything. And then he showed us a study, the most mind-blowing, two studies he showed me in dental school. One totally depressed me. One was a study of 40 identical twins raised apart since birth, and the mean average age of getting them back was like 40 or 50, and of like something like, I forgot how many, it was like of 10 dental parameters, 9 of them were the same.
Wow.
And you're like, oh my God, because you thought getting water fluoridation in the city was a good thing, or this, or teaching them how to brush or floss, and that one just said, genetics.
It's all about the genome.
And then the other one was people told they needed a quadruple bypass and didn't get the surgery, but changed their behavior, quit smoking, drinking, exercise, and all that stuff, versus the ones that got the free $100,000 no skin in the game, socialized medicine, a gift from Bernie, didn't change any of their behavior, and it didn't impact. And the group that didn't get the bypass lived 3.5 years longer. The ones who changed their behavior and didn't get the bypass lived 3.5 years longer than the ones who got the $100,000 of other people's money confiscated by the IRS, or you'll go to jail. No skin in the game, and it didn't they didn't live longer.
Well, one of my favorite things to say is that prosthodontics is the specialty of patient management, and whether it's the way you teach people or the way you sometimes have to confront them. That's one thing that I will often confront patients with. I will say the stuff we do 2 days a year means very little. It's all about what you do at home every single day. And then I just like to be silent and stare at them and wait for them to, have some glimmer of recognition. And sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. But I think you said it right there. That's true of most things. We have pretty much a genetic pre-programmed path of least resistance that we all go down, given not much change. But if people, and whether that's the individual genome, the microbiome, the transcriptome, yada, 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 we can argue about that for days. But I do think that if a person is willing to modify their behavior, it can make a difference. Now, the degree to which, for example, occlusal disease or, clenching and bruxing is modifiable, I haven't seen any good studies on that.
And it's not just the gut microbiome, but it turns out there's a trade-off to our sewage. Because if you would have gone back to the CDC for 50 years and saying, well, what extended life expectancy the most? They always said clean water, sewage, and vaccinations. Accounts for almost all that. And now it looks like we're seeing the trade-off of sewage, because they're saying the fermentation, that when you most animals and humans for the first 50,000 years, you were eating and pooping in the same place. So that's how you got the bigger fruit. So you go out naturally selecting, you pick the largest berries, then you'd eat them, but then you poop in the same place, the seeds that come through. So you were always selective, the largest seeds, they were growing. So that's what we know accounts for why an ear of corn is 1,000 times bigger than a natural ear of corn, tomatoes, berries, all that kind of stuff. But it turned out there was something more. When you were pooping there, the diseases, the cold, it mutates. It's always changing. It's mutating. It's a generation every 20 minutes, whereas humans every 20 years. It's in that deal. It's in your food supply.
It's the coevolution.
It's the coevolution. So your gut microbiome is fermenting outside of you and still evolving with the changing deal that you're getting back in your food supply. And it was a continuous circle. But now that poop is like in our house, it just goes down to the basement into Ryan's room.
Right.
And just like a shower. And
even worse than I'd imagined. Wow.
So it seems like now that turns out there's a bad side of sewage. So there's a lot of variables in there. But my question is always, I just think it'd just be horrible to be out on the dating scene kissing, they know because of STDs, they would, wear something, a protective thing. I think they named a dental insurance company after it, a Trojan. I'll never. Yeah. What was your next best idea for that dental company?
Well, it's like when you tell your patient they need a prophylaxis, right? Where does their mind go?
Yeah. But do you think cario, perio, do you think there's anything about trade and spit? Do you think lovers are sharing this disease?
I think it would be foolish to say no.
Absolutely.
It's easy for us. The whole scientific method is for us to reduce variables as much as possible, try to spotlight one thing and modify it and see what we can get from it. And it's very easy to have the same sort of reductionist thinking when you're looking at natural selection, for example, like the situation you're talking about. People marvel at corn and say, how do we get this from this weird grass, right? People forget the locus of selection, where those genes are flowing. It's not the individual. It's not even the species. It's the community. It's the predator. It's the prey. It's the foodstuffs. It's everything. It's the climate. And I think this same logic can extend to a lot of things. I think our biggest downfall as a society is we get hyper-focused on the small things, and we can't, we generalize the small things to things that aren't appropriate, but then we don't try to look at the whole. And I think, just like you talked about combining the data sets of TechScan with Invisalign, I think that's as close as I get to being a tech future optimist, is saying as these big data sets come together and artificial intelligence can look at it in a way we can't, what are we going to learn from it? I would say it's very similar to, economists talk about the tragedy of the commons, right? Everyone has access to a given common resource, and so everyone wants to use it, and eventually it gets used up and destroyed. I think we kind of see the same thing with enamel, Enamel is a limitless resource that keeps coming back, and so no one values it. Just like we don't value air, even though it's the most important thing for us. We value gold a lot more because of rarity and scarcity. They're finding asteroids out there that have enough gold that it's millions of times the value of the world economy, in the quintillions. You bring that thing down, and suddenly there goes our whole basis for value on so many things, you know? Uh,
Well, if they captured that, they could probably pay off everyone's alimony.
well, almost.
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 And that's back to cario. I think another problem with transferring knowledge of cario, perio versus occlusion is that severely worn dentition where we've all seen it 100 times. And you say to Frank, "Did you have a hard time chewing?" It's like, dude, I could eat a cow.
I ate myself.
Yeah. So it's very confusing when over this case, the instructor is saying, well, this guy's his right leg doesn't work and he has erectile dysfunction and depression because he has an interference on this bicuspid over here. And I adjusted the dot and the line and now his right leg works. And
His
then you're
dog
looking
likes him again. His wife came back to him.
and then you're looking at this guy where his teeth are down to nubs and he's eating a double bacon cheeseburger, no problem.
Well, and again, what's the solution? Hack some more away, right? Just grind it down more. And that's one of the things that upsets me most about modern dentistry is we have excellent adhesive materials. We can do miraculous things, but for whatever reason, these additive solutions that don't involve grinding down the whole tooth to nothing in order to restore it seem to come from countries with more socialized medicine. They come out of the University of Geneva, Hamburg, for whatever reason, our model of fee-for-service dentistry, which I would call piecework, basically, it influences us to do the most predictable, simplest thing, most predictable today. And again, I think that's the problem with most of our society is the focus on the right now. You look at the difference between someone who's on the street living for heroin and someone who's planning generations and centuries ahead for their heirs. The main difference is what's their time frame of outlook. If everyone's focused on the quarterly earnings, where does that get us?
But when I look at that, I see a lot of physicians and dentists beating themselves up about the current state of the healthcare deal.
Mm-hmm.
But there are 1 million physicians and there are 1 million attorneys. And I beg to differ that it is the 1 million attorneys who all the Congress and Senate and the Supreme Court, you go back to 1776, it's all lawyers. There's not dentists and prosthodontists and physicians in that. So they got the whole government in their right hand, and then they use that to shake down business and have created the mess they're in. And so to me, it's just comical that you're going to vote for some lawyer in Washington to fix all the problems. It's like they've been breaking your legs for 250 years, and now you go, if I give you more money, will you stop breaking my legs? It's like I've met the enemy, and it's all the regulation, and they focus on all the taxes and all the things like that. But just think how much healthcare would be less broken without all this stuff. You talk about use of black light in minimally invasive dentistry. Explain that.
Oh, this is something that I enjoy a lot. Actually, the idea came to me because I was listening to a podcast where they're talking about these Chinese texts that were from 6,000 years ago that other texts had referenced, but they didn't have any actual copies of it except for 1 or 2 that were all faded. And so they looked at it under different wavelengths, and they found that one of the pigments they used had a particular type of copper in it that would fluoresce under a given type of light. And I said, in dentistry, everything aesthetic is transparent and it's all the same color. So, how many times have we cemented something, the patient complains of sensitivity, and you take a scaler to it, oh my God, there was a big fin of composite along composite resin along the margin of that. And how did I miss it, So I started thinking to myself, maybe there are other wavelengths that we could see these things under. So I started playing around with it, doing a benchtop thing. And cheap black light off of Amazon for $10. You can see a lot of differences in fluorescence.
Did you post that on Dental Town?
I didn't. No.
Did you have like a little video or something? Or
I have a PDF of a poster that I put together for.
Will you post that on Dental Town? That sounds cooler. So funny. You were doing the bench laptop thing.
Yeah. So I started thinking resins, and then there's a lot of hand waving and lots of articles and ink spilled over how do you find a screw access, for example, in a cement retained implant crown. So I did a little research, and most of the different porcelain manufacturers will make a high fluorescence glaze. So you can just put a little dot of a high fluorescence something or other, or if you prefer to have, if you have a patient who's a bartender and has to have a good smile under black light, then maybe just leave a little dot of it off of wherever the screw is. And this way, if you ever have to access the screw, you know right where to drill. So things like that, like I said, cleaning up resin cement, trying to, again, if someone has to have a fluorescent smile because they're always under black light, you can look at the different manufacturers. They all publish different fluorescence values, and you can kind of figure out how to make it match for the patient. So there are lots of cool applications for it. Another thing that I love is, again, I'm very, very into adhesive dentistry, not cutting away any more enamel than we have to make something work. But sometimes you have very thin enamel on a surface and you can't quite tell, am I in dentin, am I in enamel? Maybe until you have already put phosphoric acid on it, maybe not even then. But if you hit it with a black light, you can see that enamel and dentin, they fluoresce differently, and so you can know exactly where the margin of your enamel is, and you can have a little.
Do they sell one for dentistry for this?
Well, that's another NDA I need you to sign.
Okay.
No, I mean I don't have any expectation of getting rich off of it. Again, it's something you can get off of Amazon for $10.
You should try to get rich, because that girl you're dating, you don't know what the true cost of that is. And Ryan, did you set up a separate savings account for your little wife yet?
You know what? I shouldn't have moved to New York. They do have palimony.
They have palimony? Or
do
they have, it's the, what's the one where if you live together?
Yeah.
What's that one called?
The wrong term. Common law marriage.
Do they have common law in New York?
I'm not sure. I looked it up once.
I looked it up big time in Arizona. I had a friend. I don't want to say his name. Oh my gosh, love him to death. He's no longer with us. But anyway, he lived in Georgia, and he lectured all around the world. Was always gone, and he one day met the love of his life, and they decided they were gonna get married, buy a house, different state. She got him for common law.
Really?
I mean, $1 gazillion.
Wow.
I mean, it's such a criminal outrage.
Well, it's different in different states too.
Yeah.
They all have their own,
and
literally common law.
And that's why I feel sorry for the. I get so many questions and from other countries, and that is the common error. They think of the United States as like a country,
right?
And they don't realize that Medicare is federal law about healthcare, and Medicaid is state law, and there's 50 states, and they're all different. It's different on marriage and states and dentistry, and like you're licensed in New York.
Mm-hmm.
What states can you practice in?
Just New York.
No. What other state can you practice in? What's the only state that passed a law that if you're licensed
reciprocity for any state?
For any state.
I'm going to guess Arizona then.
Arizona.
All right. Good.
That's why we are number one in DSOs. 18.6% of dentists in Arizona work for a DSO, whereas on the distribution, 5 states aren't even at 1%.
Wow.
And we're at 18% because the DSOs are expanding here because, like, they'll be in Florida and they need a prosthodontist.
Right.
But you're in New York and you're like, I don't want to jump through all these hoops for Dallas. It's not worth it. And some states are better at keeping people out than others. And they go, well, hell, I'll go to Arizona today.
Well, my niece has a loose tooth, so maybe I'll bring her to your office later on.
You can, and I hope you do. You sent your mother there.
I did, yes, and thank you so much for that.
Yeah, I think well, it's just, again, it's what I said earlier. 1 million attorneys, all these costs that the millennials don't understand, that the only secret to lower prices is lower cost. The only secret to lower taxes is less regulation. So when they see the high cost of healthcare, they just think that 8 billion humans couldn't figure out what Adam Smith said in 1776 day, that we got all that wrong. None of that mattered. Throw that out. It's just fundamentally broken, and we should get a lawyer, especially a politician, to help fix it. And they just don't realize they're the ones that completely messed it all up from A to Z. But anyway, enough of that.
I'm not sure I would take us back to 1800 before there was regulation on meat processing and real medications. Like I said, Dr. Pepper being sold as a medication.
So you promote Coke without cocaine?
Well,
Blasphemy.
no, not since they took the cocaine out.
Blasphemy. I could be drinking Coke with cocaine if it wasn't for people like you. Ryan, show this guy to the door. You're my bouncer today. Yeah, everything should be a nice equilibrium. And I believe that I am so optimistic and so excited about life because and I got to quit repeating it to everybody, but Neil Armstrong landed on the moon in '69 with a computer weaker than this, and that was the first time Sapien ever landed on the moon. Right. And I believe that when Steve Jobs stuck the internet in the phone, that 2007 was the first time Sapien arrived on Earth and could see the same hand that the people on the top could see for 5,000 years. And I think instead of a 6-to-1 conversion, I just measure by kill rates. They kill 6, your own family kills 1. I mean, families kill their own. You catch your Ryan's going to have to deal with this someday when he comes home and his wife is with his 3 other brothers. And, so families kill 1%.
Well, the most common way of killing family members is killing the elderly in your family. So just keep an eye on them.
Yeah, Ryan, as soon as I don't recognize you, I want you to push my wheelchair into the pool and say, "Hey, Dad, you need a bath." Hey, if I don't know who you are, I don't want you spending any time taking care of me. But I think that this was the birth of the individual, 2007. And I have seen from 2007 to 2020, the glorious rise of the individual, and I think it's going to reach an equilibrium 1-to-1. But I only measure it in kill. And when it started, it was these guys kill 6 for you killing 1 of your own, and I think the equilibrium should be 1-to-1. So if they bring that, you got 3 million people in prison. A lot of them were smoking pot. Of course, we've never had a president that smoked pot, all this crazy madness stuff, And I understand where it all came from because for 5,000 years, all the people were illiterate and couldn't read or write.
Sure.
And now they've all got a supercomputer in their hand. And I just have more faith in the individual. So,
but as you say, institutions matter. It all depends on who's making the rules, unfortunately.
Right. But when you make a rule, when you make a rule, as long as you realize that if this rule goes south, you pull me over, I didn't pay a parking ticket. Well, you just gave the policeman the right to kidnap me,
right,
transport me to a cage, and you're in New York. Wasn't there a study in New York, like 1,000 people are in jail just because they couldn't pay like a $50 fine or a $50 fee, so they'll end up sitting in a cage for weeks and months.
Common. Hey, I mean,
for $50.
In some places, those police have a right to kill you depending on the color of your skin. So, hey,
yeah,
it's a pretty ugly situation. In fact, I told you about that black light poster. I originally wanted to title the poster "Black Lights Matter," but I was afraid I'd have 90-year-old prosthodontists throwing articulators. So.
Well, you were. I love your post. I love you. I love your post. You posted a couple of times that multiple convictions of racially motivated violent hate crimes. Is that thread?
Yeah. Apologies to Hogo. I spammed the page a little bit.
But I think what I love is free speech. And if we're going to have, because I grew up in this Catholic school, my dad passed away. He was Howard Eugene Ferran. Mm-hmm. He named me Howard Eugene Ferran II. Mm-hmm. Very confusing. So everyone called my dad Gene and me a mistake. And, I'm still waiting for that sex talk from my dad. Okay. And now I have 5 grandchildren and I still haven't got this talk.
Generational repression.
And right? He could tell you the most horrific joke. But if you said a sex joke, I mean, he'd wreck the car and get out of my car. It's like what you just said, and now a sex joke is bad. So I think that all bad stuff comes from the heart. And when little kids ask a question, and I hear that with my grandkids all the time, where they'll ask a question and their mother will say, Don't ask that. It's like, she's 3.
Right. She
just had a question and to her grandpa. She should feel safe. And why would her mother be putting downward pressures on a 3? Could you imagine you just arrived on Earth, you're 3, and here's the guy that breaks all the rules, gives you all the candy, you eat whatever the hell you want. There's no kale in Grandpa's house. And then a mother says you can't ask Grandpa that question. That's blasphemy. I love it when people talk about the controversial stuff, because everybody talks about the things we don't need to talk about. But I'm going to go back. I want to hold your feet to the fire on that adhesive dentistry, because
Sure.
you say the state of education surrounding adhesive dentistry and why we teach our students to do the wrong things every time. What do you mean by that? That's a strong statement.
Well, granted, some of your viewers might consider me old now because I graduated almost 10 years ago, 7 years ago.
Well, that's your 10. What was that book? You do your 10,000 hours.
Oh, sure. Malcolm Gladwell.
Malcolm Gladwell. Tipping Point. No.
All of his stuff blends together in my head.
David and Goliath. No, the
It
dog.
wasn't Outliers.
It was
It wasn't Blink. It was, I'm not sure.
Malcolm Gladwell, 10,000 hours. But anyway, so
I was trained to cut GV black preps, whether they were needed or not. I was basically taught that anything other than amalgam in the posterior was heresy at best and malpractice at worst. But not to mention when I like most people my age, I have some group texts with people who are friends from dental school. And if I just get on there and vent about all people cutting down these teeth completely for full coverage crowns when it's totally unnecessary, we have adhesive resins now. They say, oh, well, we didn't learn about it in dental school. So is it predictable? Is it something I can do when patient's not going to come back and break it? Basically, it comes down to temporization. It's more convenient to have a temporary that has mechanical retention. So that's what everybody does. And again, the value of being able to have a conversation with your patient and explain to them there's a chance something might come loose in the temporary phase, but we can fix that. You give us a call, we'll let you know when you can pop right in, pop right out, and we'll get it taken care of. But in exchange, you spend the next 80 years of your life, because most people my age are slated to live 100 years. You're going to spend the next 80 years of your life holding on to that half of the tooth structure that otherwise we'd cut away. There's studies in the PFM days where they show 70% of the tooth gone for a crown. Is that really what we want to routinely do, or for that to be our model? Well, then I talk to people who have been doing it their whole career, and of course the problem is cognitive dissonance, or confirmation bias, right? They can't consider the possibility that they've been doing this their whole career and they're harming people. So they say, well, it's more predictable. If it breaks, then we'll do an endo and a post. Oh, if it breaks, then we'll put in an implant, we'll cure their titanium deficiency. Unfortunately, there are better ways, but people aren't learning it. I hope to God that people are learning it in dental school now. You look at people like David Clark, who's done a lot of work to revamp how people are doing preparations for direct adhesive dentistry, and it just makes sense. But unfortunately, people get stuck in this mode and they don't want to consider anything else, so they tar it with the brush of unpredictable or whatever the case may be.
And then the insurance is a lot of that, where they won't pay for an onlay or an inlay. I have 7 gold restoration on my mouth, all with zinc phosphate cement, and Delta wouldn't have approved for any of those, because
Are they onlays or inlays? Because one thing that's very valuable that someone taught me that made a huge difference for me is if it touches every surface of the tooth, by the ADA definition, it is a crown. So if I do a tabletop occlusal veneer, but I'm over the line angle on every side, that meets the ADA definition of a crown.
But look at Delta Dental of Arizona, and if you want to, after this podcast, we can all get in a car, and I'd love to drive you over there and show you their parking lot. It's all $60,000 cars.
Yeah.
And it's like, okay, well, the median average car, new car, we're talking new car. Forget the fact that 70% of cars sold in the United States are used cars, and 70% of houses sold are used houses. Only 1 of 3 homes sold is new or same cars. At the top of the market, it might be 12 to 19 million cars a year, but it's still the old car. But let's just say that everybody just only got new cars. You can't apply that $30,000 car and benefit and then pay $30,000 more for a nicer car. So, like, if it's a gold crown with gold prices fluctuating,
Right.
They're all going to zirconium. But if I said, well, you can upgrade that town to gold, but you're going to have to give me $100 copayment or something like that. Delta will shut that down. They're always shutting down the top.
Right.
And it doesn't matter if it's Delta, the police department, the Department of Justice. It doesn't matter who it is at the top. The number one thing they always want to do is not be transparent and take away your choice. And so if you just say, well, we're going to find out what you're doing. We now have a super cube here. My name's Neil Howard the Duck Armstrong, and I'm standing on the earth now, and I can see your hand. So the transparency is what's going to cut their legs out. But the next thing is why it's so parochial to sit there and think that, well, I don't know what's best for me. I can't make this decision. Back to that regulation thing, which I understand where it all comes from. But I mean, it's 2020. If Coca-Cola sells you something that says this is 1 gram of cocaine, my first thought would be, well, do they have like the extra Coke that has like 10 grams of cocaine?
Of course, this is America.
We
invented crack.
And you might be thinking, I want Coke Light. I want Coke without any cocaine. It was Malcolm Gladwell's, the book was Outliers.
Outliers. Oh.
So you have, there's been a lot of research on this. And of course, the press only picks up the one time he was wrong.
Right.
And it was with learning how to play the violin. So now I don't even like that instrument anymore. Malcolm, but the 10,000. So you've done your 10,000 hours. So you're at the peak, the prime. You also talk about something. Online education, the incredible potential and terrible downfalls. I just want to say that for Dental Town Online CE, that we started Dental Town in '98, and this was home of Phoenix Online, University of Phoenix,
right? Of course.
Online, and my God, when I saw that, I just thought to myself, hell, I don't want to go. I don't want to fly I was always flying around because when I came here, there was no dental schools. So I'm not just proud that I got my FAGD and my MAGD. I'm glad I got my MAGD. My only bragging rights is I got it done before Arizona had a dental school. Because you know how much that actually probably cost me?
Oh,
I mean, days missed from work. Oh my, yeah.
Actually, more when you consider the opportunity
Absolutely.
cost.
Yeah. The away from the office, there's a $10,000 a day hit, and then you're flying all. I mean, to get my fellowship in the Mission Institute, I had to fly to Pittsburgh 7 times for 3 days, and but what made it all worth it is Kiss played there one night, so I think. I was in this course with the same guys, 7 3-day weekends, and I think it was on weekend 5th or something. Kiss was playing, and I went down there at the lunch break and got scalping tickets, and we went back there that night. That was so damn fun to see them singing that. But anyway, but what is the incredible potential and terrible downfalls about online education?
Well,
and can you work them all into the course that you're going to make someday?
Absolutely. I've got terrible downfalls like you wouldn't believe.
I want it to call. In fact, can we name your course "The Incredible Terrible Downfalls of Online CE"? Click here for more.
Actually, that might sell. I've always said the best lectures I've ever seen have been the failure lectures, and no one has the guts to do them, or maybe no one has the forethought to document their failures.
And that's the most profound. My favorite business book guy in the world was Jim Collins. He wrote Built to Last. He wrote Good to Great. He wrote but his best was the only one that was the opposite, How the Mighty Fall.
Right.
And it was the shortest book because how they do great things is an entropy Cambrian explosion of possibilities.
Well, and mythology,
how they fall,
generations, right?
how you fall and die is pretty succinct. But that was a good one, and the best one, I always forget his name. He was a prosthodontist that spent his last years at Green Laboratory in Arkansas, and I think the answer to your question is he only did it because he was the highest self-esteem implantologist in the world.
Well, you said prosthodontist. We know he has high self-esteem.
Yeah, and he would just sit there and say, "Look, I'm not gonna. I don't have low self-esteem. I'm not gonna come up here and carry the same 5 great cases all around the world for 20, 30 years like these other people." Yeah. He goes, "I'm gonna show you the worst mistakes I ever made, and every one of those mistakes, you just sit there and thought, I'm never doing that again."
Right.
I think it's the best. So you should follow in his footstep and just totally photo document every failure and have the balls to go up there and say, "Here's my mistake."
No, I'll blame him on the dentist before me.
Well, and the dentist, no, it's not. It was the lab's fault anyway. I mean, the lab. What is wrong with these labs?
I don't know. They can't wax a margin to a bleb.
But what were you going to say about online education?
So, I hope I don't sound negative on online education because I'm the biggest believer in it of anybody. But I think the problem is more cultural than anything. I think we can get such a good picture of something and we can get such a good explanation of it and narration of it. Unfortunately, too often it's from someone who really is giving you the tip of the iceberg and wants to sell you the ice cubes. And then, what you miss is all the mistakes that are going to give you heartache for the rest, next 10 years of your life. So I think it's partly that, and it's partly the kind of Postmatesification of our culture that no one wants. Postmates, so it's the app where you have food delivered to you, right?
That's called Postmate?
There's one called Postmates, yeah.
That's the name of an app?
There's 100 of them. But
that one flew over my head. So Postmate is a New York app that delivers food?
Must be. I don't know where it's based.
Okay.
But I'm sure they have a foothold in New York because it's the home of not wanting to talk to anyone else. I have to adjust here to acknowledging people when I make eye contact with them because in New York it would be weird. But, people don't want to go out. They don't want to meet someone. They don't want to learn hands-on. And so often, obviously what we do is all about the hands-on. Again, the cerebral stuff is important because you have to understand risk factors, modify them, and know what to expect. But you got to know how to do it at the end of the day. And unfortunately, I think when I say online education, I'm not talking about like Dental Town. I'm talking about more like Facebook. When you have these... you have people, again, posting cherry-picked cases, someone who spent a whole day on a single crown and they're showing you how to supposedly build a better mousetrap. Well, it may have an application, but if they're selling it to make their name on it, then what the message they're going to put out, wittingly or unwittingly, is this is the best way and it's the one that works in every situation and it's the only thing that works. But unfortunately, people who don't have the experience to have been burnt by that a few times are going to do it, and they're going to harm the patients. When you compare that to, what you guys have done at Dental Town, where you have comprehensive curricula from people who know and are interested to teach you the whole thing, because again, they have the self-esteem and they don't need the money or to build their lecturing career. It makes a huge difference. So it's just like anything else, just a matter of consider the source.
The first red flag on online CE is the comments have been disabled. It's like, gee. And then the second thing I would say about it, and like I say, I really, my opinion, I can't stand people that go to graveyards and scream at the dead people. I mean, you're here because of them. So almost all humans lived in the last 50,000 years. They're starting to push that back now. I noticed stuff. So, but basically it's been 100 billion. So 100 billion, 99% of all humans lived in the last 50,000 years. And you know what present they gave us? Our presents. The greatest present you'll ever get is the awareness of your existence on Earth. And you got it from the 100 billion people that died before. So I don't like to go back there and start yelling at them for everything they did wrong because we're not perfect either. But it seems like in the modern history of 5,000 years, again, the problem has been the top conspires down on the individual, and they do it without transparency. So back to the speaking, the thing I know is when they submit photos to publication, we have software, and we say, well, that's been documented. That's been altered. Give us a real photo. So that's a huge problem. But the other problem is the lack of transparency, that this guy just gave a whole lecture and you don't know that he works for this company.
Right.
And then you go, and then people say they don't realize that you go to this meeting. You just come back from Chicago, didn't whatever. I wish you'd do a course on when those people go rent all those booths. They'll say, okay, I rent all those booths, but I get 4 speakers.
Right.
And so they don't really, because if you look at those deals, look at the biggest names in speaking. And then why are the names that they never post on Dental Town, they don't have online CE, you never hear of these guys.
Right.
But they're at every flipping meeting all the time. I just think they should have to wear the NASCAR suit and just stand up there and say, hey, you see who, and I have no problem with that because I know the owners of most of these companies and most of these people, it's a huge misunderstanding to think that like the owner of Ultradent, Dan Fisher, is just some schmuck trying to sell you a bunch of crap that he doesn't believe in. I mean, it's his personal identity. It's his entire life. I've ran into that guy in a dozen different countries.
Right.
And to see, I'll never forget, He was the first guy that showed me a periatome, and we were in Cologne, Germany. It was like 20 years ago. The guy was so excited. I had a hard time listening to his explanation because I was just thinking, okay, you're too excited about a periatome. You're holding a periatome. This isn't some lost artifact from a from a temple in I mean, and you just knew
Yeah.
that if you took away his dental degree and his dental company and gave him that asteroid filled with gold, he'd die sad.
Right.
I mean, you just took away his whole life.
Well,
So it's totally cool. But just be honest. Just say I work for Dan and I'm speaking for Dan Fisher, and just be honest. But when they can't be honest, there's usually it's just a huge red flag.
Well,
So
people want to believe that people are doing things for the right reasons, and the majority of the time they are. But we're not good at spotting fakers, and we're not good at spotting liars, unfortunately. So.
And when I got to 300,000 followers on Facebook, I quit. I'm no longer there. I have nothing to do with it, and it's for two reasons. Number one, that when you post, only 6% of your people see it because they're just shoving you ads. So you think that you have 100 people following you, and they all saw this. I have 300,000 on Facebook, and indeed they don't see it. But what I don't like about those types of social media platforms is that if I say you can fix all gum disease with green tea, because you know you can, and then if I disagree, you unfriend me.
Sure.
So that's that balkanization where you're starting, and that's why they hate Dental Town, which continues to grow all the way through. We were 4 years before Facebook and have added 1,000 new users every month since Facebook started in 2004. And the reason it's actually the momentum is coming back is because these people in the bubble, they've never been exposed. And you can see it also. I used to call it the Saddam Hussein syndrome. The Saddam Hussein syndrome, you go into a dental office and everybody's like, yes, doctor. And they just agree with whatever the doctor says. And that is a dysfunctional deal for the owner operator.
For everyone, unfortunately.
Because you think these people who have been by your side for 10 years are helping you, but they're afraid of you.
And they hate you.
And they hate you, and they're telling you what they think you want to hear. Because Saddam Hussein, if they said, well, if we invade Kuwait, I mean, you're the general, can we keep out America? Well, what are you going to say? Oh, hell yeah.
Of course, otherwise I'll be shot.
Yeah, because if you said, actually, it'll take about 100 hours and we'll be decimated, he would have shot you.
Right.
Stalin actually died in severe pain for last week because he was moaning, but every doctor that came in and couldn't do anything, he killed.
Wow.
So what that turned out to be is the last week, he was just all moaning and crying, and everybody cleared out of the house and just like let him go down because are you going to risk your life for Mr. Stalin? Another thing you say, and by the way, you are so cerebral. The perverse incentives created by our current payer models and the tragedy of the commons that they create. That was what you were saying with the insurance.
Absolutely.
Delta all wants to upgrade to the nicer car, but when they give you $100 towards a filling, you're not allowed to upgrade it to a gold inlay, a gold onlay, or anything because the good people at Delta think that you're an illiterate person that can't read or write and doesn't have a smartphone, and they need to make that decision for you.
Well, and so they make the decision for you, so it forces the dentist into an uncomfortable situation where they have to make the decision for the patient. The patient never understood their options, which is technically malpractice, right? So then when anything goes wrong, the dentist is on the hook, both personally, because we all take this stuff personally, but also professionally and financially. It's just as you said, it's another case of the top trying to dictate to the bottom and unfortunately having the money to do it. And I don't know what the solution is, but, one of your heroes, Marko Vujicic, I'm not sure how it's pronounced.
No one can say his name. I don't think he can say his own name.
He mumbles when he says it.
Marko, how do we say it? Marko, I need to get that guy back. What is it, Ryan?
I don't know. I didn't want to try. I thought it
was actually, you know who?
Points for trying. I'll give you that.
Your mother, Ryan. Not only does she speak fluent French, but I could never believe that anytime we went to another country before we left, she could get by on the street in that language. Wow. I mean, just and see, I can't. I'm typing in on Dentistry Uncensored, and I can't even find. Oh, I'll go with Marko.
But he and the ADA, what is it, Health Policy Center, they had a great article a few years ago that I was shocked by how little attention it got. But it was basically saying we have to do something to change these reimbursement methods. And, I don't know. I think it was John Coyce who used to say that there should be an enamel preservation fee that we should be charged or that we should receive. I think that makes a heck of a lot of sense because as it is, we're predisposed to do what we do. And what we do 9 times out of 10 is destroying something, unfortunately.
And isn't that amazing? I've typed in ADA economist. Don't find him.
Marco with a
I just sent you a
K,
text.
I think.
I'm on ldi.upenn.edu. He's on that website, but
Okay, there it is. Sorry, Marco, if anybody sent you. VUJICIC. I think he's born and raised in that's the smartest guy in dentistry. That's the smartest economist. He was from Toronto. He was at the World Health, the United Nations. When the ADA got him, my first thought was, how the hell did you get that guy? And they did. They got him. And what I love about him, because, a real economist, the real ones, they don't have a dog in the game. I mean, they're just there to tell you, actually what you just said was completely right or completely wrong based on here's all this data. I mean, you become an economist when you don't have enough personality to become an accountant. And my God, and is pretty cool. I mean, you talk to that guy, you think, well, that's a normal guy I'd like to have a beer with. But if you did, he wouldn't be. He would just be this incredibly boring guy. Probably drink iced tea the whole time. But Vucic, smartest guy in dentistry, love his deals. And some of it are, I still want to hear more. I'll come back to that, Vucic. But the creative, the incentives are just because Delta, the insurance doesn't even make sense because the only reason it started is because, again, the government. Mm-hmm. So the whole deal about healthcare debate, it all started. None of those, they say, well, the 20 richest countries have socialized medicine. Well, they didn't before World War II. This all happened after World War II. Mm-hmm. And it all happened when Churchill said, to rebuild this country, it's not going to help if everybody's illiterate and sick. Mm-hmm. So let's build public schools and public hospitals. Come from the heart. Great deal. But in America, it was because during World War II, they put a wage limit on prices. So it was the strongest union of the time. And remember, unions are to help the working man get more money, right? Yeah. And the bottom half don't have any unions. And where's the biggest union? Oh, the Pilots Association. They make $200,000. It's always the richest people.
The biggest is the baseball players.
The what?
The most powerful is the baseball players.
Yeah. So the richest people who make so much money can afford to pay union dues. So the whole union deal says we're for the working man. The working man can't afford a damn union. It's only the richest professions, and the American Dental Association is a trade union. So is the AMA. Sure. But you're right, it's baseball and all that kind of stuff. But anyway, so they put price wage out there. So the Longshoremen's Club, you couldn't ship anything out of this country. And the reason America had the biggest post-World War II gain, it was the largest economic transfer of wealth of all time. In fact, finding oil in the Middle East was only half that wealth transfer because everything was made in Germany and Europe, and they were leveled. Hell, Japan had 2 nuclear bombs. I mean, Japan and Tokyo didn't declare the Reconstruction over from World War II till 1980, which was the year I graduated from high school. So from World War II to 1980, if you wanted to buy a toaster, refrigerator, or car, we were the only shop in town. Right. The in and out of the Longshoremen's Club, you had to ship it in or out. There were no railroads going from here to China. So basically, but I did see on Gilligan's Island where he made the cement shoes. Did you see that, where he could actually walk on the bottom all the way to freedom?
Probably made with a coconut.
But something happened. I forgot why, but it didn't work out. It was the professor. And but anyway, and yes, the answer to that question is Marianne. And the old ones know what I'm talking about. And but anyway, so they go to that deal, and so the trade shore union said, well, you can't give us a pay raise, so we're going to shake you down for something, because that's what unions do. They use force and coercion against the individual owner.
Right.
Just like the police department does it against the individual guy who's sleeping in his car in front of my Today's Dental. And I've seen that a couple times. They go out there and I walk out there. I say, is there a problem? Yeah, this guy's sleeping in his car. Okay, well, it's my freaking parking lot.
Right.
And he's like, well, it's and I'm like, officer, I own this land.
Mm-hmm.
It's a human sleeping in his car.
Right.
You make $60,000 a year and get free dental. Why are you disturbing a sleeping man sleeping? You don't have anything better to do? Well, it's our job to arrest and kidnap people, and move them to a cage and all this stuff like that. And but anyway, so they said, well, we're going to shake you down for free dental.
Right.
I'm like, why didn't you shake them down for free housing? Why didn't you get free? But think about that. Why? Because they don't want to live in a government dorm.
That's true.
So why don't you shake them down for a free car? Oh, no, it'd be government transportation. We'd be in a city bus.
Like dentistry.
Well, we'd be in a city bus. We wouldn't like that. So we don't want you messing with our house. Well, what free government food? We'll have a cafeteria. Oh, hell no, I'm going to McDonald's and eating a bacon cheeseburger, even though I have an insulin pump in my car. So they went after something they don't even understand, like dental.
Right. Well,
I don't want you to mess with my house, my food, my cars, my clothes, my shoes. They wouldn't let socialized anything come over unless they had no idea what it was. And what scares me about socialized medicine the most is I only know dentistry. I don't know shit about nothing else.
Yeah.
And when I go to all the countries with these socialized deals and I look at their schemes in London and Paris and England, it's so wrong. Right. And it's only wrong because the government made it. No one understands it. The people look at healthcare. Only 1% of Americans spent the night in a hospital last year, and most of them were for babies. So the reason everybody loves their socialized medicine is because it's a 99% chance you didn't use it last year. Well, hell, I love eating kale. You know why? Because I didn't eat any last year. But I know if I did, I would absolutely love it. I just think it's never going to happen. I
think that as with most things, the truth is somewhere in the middle, right? What
equilibrium.
Socialized programs do very well is prevention. Again, like you, I don't know anything but dentistry, but I know that in Scotland, where what they do very cheaply, they have all children, especially in low-income communities, they force them to brush their teeth twice a day at school. And it makes incredible differences in their cost of providing dentistry going forward. Prevention is oftentimes a no-brainer. But at the same time, it's the really hard work of sitting down and talking to people and helping them understand, or of making new habits where bad habits were there before. It takes a lot to force someone to change. I never flossed a day in my life till I went to dental school, but I actually saw the results, like you're saying. People have good feelings about things they don't understand.
So this came out today. What did you think of that? Scientists have created a special toothpaste that could reduce heart attacks and strokes.
I'll wait for the 5-year follow-up. but until then, I'll be cautiously optimistic. I'm curious what they're saying. But
come on, if you're quit showing off with that finger thing in the middle. Be old school, and you're just afraid of the mouse, right? You're afraid to touch it.
I was afraid I would get bit. Let's see. Well, unfortunately, C-reactive proteins. It looks like it's an anti-inflammatory. It seems very interesting. There are bound to be unintended consequences, but I definitely prefer this to, for centuries. The only approach we've had is kill all the bugs, scorched earth, everything must die. And, now we learn that if you use chlorhexidine, it makes your blood pressure go up because you basically kill bacteria that create, nitrates in your blood. So something that actually goes after the inflammation, which tends to be the real source of the problem, it's very exciting. I hope it works out beyond the whatever level of test they're on now.
Sorry if we're going overtime.
No, I'm in no hurry. I told you I'm on vacation.
Okay, well, my goal is to ruin your vacation. This next thing that you talk about a lot, and I'm a big fan of your posts, but the young have the hardest time managing patients. The patient is a dog, the dentist is the tail, and my God, the 4 or 5 dumbest, worst things I ever did. I actually told the patient why I would never do that, and then they talked me into doing it. Yeah, and one of them was the editor, Ryan, of the Ahwatukee newspaper. No, the owner of the paper. And I'm like, dude, I couldn't pull that wisdom tooth if you put a gun to my head. And he said, well, you're going to do it, and you'll be fine. And sure enough, it took an hour and a half. I was 24 years old. but we got it done. But they talk you into things. So what would we tell young kids about after your 10,000 outlier hours about patient management?
Today's hero is tomorrow's asshole, and that's always the case.
I was not expecting that.
Because
Today's hero is tomorrow's asshole.
I can't remember who I stole that from. Someone smarter than me for sure. But or the line I started using, and you asked why Prost. The short answer is I never want to do a distally tilted second molar endo again. But what I started telling people is, I would love to help you. I know you're in a lot of pain, but if I do this root canal, neither one of us is going to sleep tonight. And they usually appreciate what I'm trying to say. I don't care who it is. Like you mentioned in my bio, I'm in a residency where our mentors, they also see patients. And so it's great because it's a small group and we all get to say, listen, this is how I screwed up today and this is what I would do better next time. And my program director is one of the smartest people I've ever met. And what he always says is, every mistake you will make clinically is because your heart is in the right place and you're trying to do someone a favor. So you try to rush it because they're leaving town. Or maybe they don't need more anesthesia because I'm worried about whatever. Now they're in pain and you can't do what you need to do and you have an outcome that's permanent when you wanted it to be, a short-term issue. It's always your heart is in the right place and you're trying to do the right thing for them, but there are unintended consequences every time. And as much as I hate to admit it, that's why you got to make these things repeatable.
And I made a big mistake of that last week. I had a patient come in and her gums were receding and she said, I want it to stop. So I put a tourniquet around her neck and I know they won't recede anymore. But now they're like, well, now she's dead. And I'm like, well, she wanted her gum recession to stop. I stopped it.
100% cure rate every time.
But going back to the perverse incentive, you talked about the current pay models, the insurance companies, things like that. But what about the perverse incentives of the dental student trying to pay back $100,000 a year student loans to a dental school that should have one eye on the student and one eye on cost? And instead they have one eye on the student and one eye on a brand new dental office with pay raises for everyone. And I noticed the faculty, anytime you try to talk to the faculty of these dental schools, oh, he's in Italy at a TMJ conference. Oh no, he's in France at a gum disease conference. Like, we got a course on Dental Town for $18 on that gum disease. Are you sure you needed to fly to France or Italy? But they seem to live the high life, just like the nonprofit people at Delta. You know how lucky you are to be the head of a nonprofit named Delta Dental? I mean, you are a rock star.
Or a nonprofit named New York University or any of the other nonprofits.
Yeah, so you got all these nonprofits that are ran by like the Rolling Stones and Pink Floyd and the Kiss. I mean, they're just, they just live a life of whatever. But but in your heart, you're closer to, are you a millennial or
I am, yeah.
You're a millennial?
So I get to discriminate against late millennials because I'm an early millennial.
But what percent of millennials who graduated $400,000 in student loans might have a perverse incentive to do a crown instead of an MOD composite?
Every single one. And, some days they're going to win the fight. Some days they're not. And, it depends on their circumstances. It depends on what kind of office they're in. It depends on who their mentors are. And it depends on how much experience they've had to see how things are going to go wrong before they do. But it's a sad fact. If you have to make that nut every year or every month, then you're going to do what you have to do. I consider myself extremely lucky that, I had in-state tuition when I went to a state school. And
what? No, where were you born and raised?
I was born in Denver, grew up in the Kansas City area.
So was the Chiefs winning the Super Bowl the greatest thing that ever happened in your life?
I told you I was born in Denver. No.
You're a Bronco fan?
Sad but true, yeah. Our good times are past. The others. Honestly, I told you, I'm in a pros residency. I don't have time for sports.
I'll never forget when the Broncos hired when the Colts let go Manning.
Yeah.
And I ran into one of my best friends who's an orthopedic surgeon, and his neck x-rays were going around the internet. Mm-hmm. Talk about a HIPAA violation. So you could actually see. And my orthopedic friends are like, I don't know what these guys are talking about, but this man will never play football again.
Really?
And then he goes, and then when he was playing against the young, perfect athlete from the North Carolina, I mean, this is a quarterback where I've seen. What was his name? Where I've seen him tackled.
Was that Cam Newton?
Cam Newton.
Yeah.
I've seen him where he tackled and flipped over, fell over forward with
For a
the touchdown,
touchdown.
still running on his feet.
Right.
And I'm seeing him, and then I'm seeing the neck X-ray that I actually saw in the Safeway grocery store with an orthopedic surgeon, thinking, "Okay, this guy's dead."
Yeah.
And the old dead guy won.
Yeah.
And Cam Newton, I still don't understand what happened. I think he must be half Irish and went drinking at halftime. That's the only thing. That's the only thing I can figure out that he did. And then the last thing that you talk about that I'm a big fan of, you say dental sedation, why the common models predispose dangerous practices. I mean, my gosh, Joan Rivers just went in for a little thing off her larynx and died from in-office deal. And I see, I'm, full disclosure, I've, for years, some of these dental malpractice people have, they send me their either monthly or year-end settlements. Right. Because since I own a media company, they would prefer that you didn't kill people more. If there's anybody that wants you not to kill someone, it's your dental malpractice deal. Right. But my God, anytime it's a $1 million plus claim, they only had one thing in common. There was IV sedation involved. Right. And I couldn't imagine what it would be like personally to kill a patient, especially if it was a kid. Now, if you killed somebody that's as old as me, I mean, come on. The average life expectancy in 1900 was only 41. I'm 57. He was on overtime. But man, when it's
speaking of which, Ryan, I can recommend a good IV sedation course.
He's already got the vet picked out to put me down. But the bottom line is that this must be awful to kill a 4-year-old. But
Can't imagine.
I have never. And then the other thing I always call bullshit on is when your tribe does something that no other tribe does. Mm-hmm. So in America, you can't walk into any hospital and do the IV sedation and do the bypass. Right. Oh, but you can if you're in dentistry. Right. And then the next red flag I do is try to say, okay, there's 220 countries. What does all the other countries think about this issue? Then, of course, you indeed go to like United Kingdom says, indeed, we do not want the dental profession doing the IV. So everybody's come to the deal that, you can die from this, so you should probably just pay attention to that. In fact, when people say to me, they go, well, is it dangerous to get my wisdom teeth out? And I said, hell no. I said, the only thing that'll kill you is the IV sedation. And then their eyes get real big. And I'm like, well, I tough it out, man up. I mean, do it on nitrous. I know friends that are dentists who, when they had to have a surgery and they could do a spinal block,
just do it.
They did it under local because they get it. So what's your thoughts on dental sedation?
Well, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, it's the same things we keep talking about. It's lack of transparency, and it's the few conspiring against the many. I'm very, very enthusiastic that with our new specialty of dental anesthesiology, I was more excited about that than I would be if there were an implantology specialty. And I, like I said, in my heart, I'm an implantologist. But hopefully, this period is falling behind us. But historically, it's been, as you said, oral surgeons that are doing the procedure at the same time they're doing the sedation. For many, many years, there were very good financial incentives for oral surgeons to want to control the way sedation is done. Even down to there was a major vote maybe 2-3 years ago. There was a change that the ADA started recommending additional training and basically the equivalent of IV training to do oral sedation. You'll rarely hear me complain about additional training, but what many people more expert in the field than I am interpreted this as is a power grab to try to create a larger barrier to entry. Of course, the people who suffer are going to be the people in rural areas. So if someone who their business model depends on sedating people, they go away to now mandatory training when they've been doing oral sedation for 1 million years with no problems, and now it's illegal for them to give Valium and nitrous at the same time because it's multi-drug, which it puts in a different category. They go away to IV training and they're taught that it's the newest and the best and the only predictable way. Well, now they've just fallen from the frying pan into the fire. The only people I know about who are really talking about this are the doc sedation people and Stephen Rasner, who's an amazing general dentist, amazing practitioner, and a great guy and podcast host in South New Jersey. He talks about a combination of a benzodiazepine, short-acting, short half-life, along with a couple different types of antihistamine, and it just and nitrous. It just makes sense. You don't go too deep with any one thing, so you're not pumping someone full of fentanyl, and again, the tail wagging the dog. It's doing what's necessary to get the job done. I did a few implants for my mother, and it's been some years ago now, but she was already on an antihistamine she was using as a sleep aid, and I suggested she take one other antihistamine, and I gave her a short-acting benzodiazepine. And I asked her, of course she was cooperative the whole time. She could answer questions. We were chatting and laughing on the way over to the procedure, and then she took a nap after that. And I asked her the other night, I said, Mom, when I did those implants for you, granted it's been a few years ago, what do you remember of it? And she said, not much. If I had to guess, I'd say the whole thing took about 5 minutes. Well, I was doing implants on my mother. I took 3 hours to do it, So there's no reason to shoot a gnat with an elephant gun, but unfortunately, the institutions and the individuals who have an ability to profit from it tend to push things in that direction. So, you see the propofol and the fentanyl that's used as a first line when everyone I talk to who went through the same training and is an oral surgeon, when I, like you always say, I get a couple of drinks in them, the first thing they say is, no, I like to keep it light. I like to start with a little Versed and see what's needed and take it from there. And I'm doing right now some sedation training with someone way more knowledgeable than myself. And when he has the opportunity, that's what he likes to do too. If it's got to be IV, start him with a little Versed and only ramp it up as needed. That's the whole benefit of doing IV is you can titrate it. So why go straight to the big guns? Well, because that's your business model. You got 40 people coming in for wisdom teeth today. You got to get them under, get it done, and get them out. So what if there's zombies for an hour? That's the model, unfortunately.
It's funny you said Dr. Stephen Rasner. Do you know he was on the guest on the show? Love that guy to death. Just an amazing man. But do you know what I always think of whenever I think of Dr. Rasner? Guess who? You're 35.
Mm-hmm.
So do you remember how old were you in 1986?
2 years old.
Okay, well you should
I may
know
not
that.
remember, but
You should know
pop
then.
culture probably
Because it was
taught
in
me.
1940. He was in the dental school with Dr. Snow. In fact, you know how you're assigned to upperclassmen?
Mm-hmm.
And then so when he went to clinic, his upperclassman guy was Dr. Snow, the guy who got sentenced to 42 years in prison for the largest Philadelphia cocaine case.
Yes.
And
yes.
so when I was in dental school, the big show was Miami Vice or something like that. It was a guy from Wichita with blonde hair and
Is that Don Johnson?
yeah, Don Johns. He was from East High in Wichita, and
Didn't know that.
and another guy. And anyway, it was the biggest show,
Mm-hmm.
and that was when cocaine started becoming a big deal, kind of like medical marijuana is now.
Right.
So everybody had to start trying that with horrible consequences, and this guy was just selling the crap out of it to all the dentists and faculty and the neighbors. But it turned out he noticed there was a van parked out in front of his car. And he was so out of his freaking mind that he told one of his drug dealers to find out who it was. And they came back and they said, it's an undercover. And then so he put a bounty on to have the guy executed. Shot right in his van. Turns out the guy he was negotiating the hit with was that guy in the van's partner. And so anyway, so he goes 42 years, which is kind of insane because it's just what a tragedy.
Never the crime; it's the cover-up. Right?
Well, it's the guy who has to serve the 42-year term isn't the same guy who did the hit. The guy who did the hit was snorting, an ounce of cocaine a day and was completely out of his mind.
Right.
But the sober dental student is going to have to sit in a cage for 42 years. So anyway, so that's always a tragedy. But sorry, but Stephen Rasner, but Stephen Rasner sums up why you should get your MAGD, FAGD, whatever, because in my 32 years, the only thing I could correlate between What did this guy have a happy career and was happy and it seemed like he was having fun and reached all of his expectations, or was this guy just miserable, burned out, and fried? The most thing I can correlate it to is number of hours of CE, and I joined the AGD because I noticed that back in the '87 that every time you went to a course, it was the same guys over and over. They were all in the AGD, and they were all upbeat on dentistry, and they all loved it. Whereas your drinking buddies might have just thought it all sucked, and it was like a downer party. And I wanted to surround myself with people that drag me up. And so then they said that to get your FAGD, you had to have this many hours in implants and this many hours in ortho. And I called the guy and said, well, I'm not going to do implants in ortho. I need more, but he wouldn't let me. So, you're young, dumb, you're all pissed off and no dental school. And I had this big requirement for implantology. And I found this one class that would do the whole thing. And it was the University of Pittsburgh. This guy never heard of Carl Misch, 7 3-day weekends. So I go in that class, sit down. Guess who I sat next to for 7 3-day weekends? Rasner. And my God, I thought I fell in love with Carl, but I fell in love with Steve Rasner, who is another MAGD. And when he told me the story, I couldn't believe that this story, because I was West Coast and this is a Philadelphia story. Pretty much all drugs and everything's East Coast, isn't it? I mean, I'm out here in the West. I mean, have we done anything wrong?
From the South.
Have we done anything wrong in the West? So my gosh, one I had, I just can't stop with you. Dental tourism and organized dentistry's place in it.
Yeah. Well, again, this is something that unfortunately organized dentistry, I don't think is really looked at. But this is something I took a deep dive on. There's a lot more literature on the medical side of medical tourism than there is dental. And it feels like an intractable problem. People can't afford what they need, and so it's a lot cheaper and easier to, especially here. Molar City is right across the border, Los Algodones, Mexico.
Have you been down there?
I've never been, but
Oh, it's very cool. You got to go.
I've seen YouTube videos, and a good friend of mine, I found out about it from a friend. He's an Air Force vet. His father's an Air Force vet. And, he had excellent dental coverage until basically, he left the service. And so he's driving his father to Mexico, getting some implants placed by a guy they can't really communicate with. He doesn't really know what's going on. I correct me if I'm wrong, but I think Mexico doesn't actually have any sort of national registry of dentists, So really, you kind of have no recourse. You're not from there. You're going away. I certainly have patients who have gone to, Puerto Vallarta and had full mouth rehabs done that turned out to be epic disasters, way beyond anything you can imagine. A patient who went to Costa Rica, got an all-on-4, turned into a sum-on-2 when she lost half of her mandible. It's just people, there are so many reasons it's such a bad idea, but it works well, or well enough in 80% of cases maybe. And what I found out in the medical field is it's something that really has been embraced in a way, because the biggest, best teaching hospitals you could name, Mayo and Duke University School of Medicine and others that I'm having trouble remembering right now, or I'm not only 50% sure and wouldn't want to say it if it's wrong. They've created partnerships with hospitals in lower income countries where they've created a situation where practitioners in other countries can get training, where practitioners from here that want to go on vacation can get training, and where it's administered or there's a partnership or at least training from these major teaching institutions, and it's sort of a rising tide that lifts all boats. It's a triple win situation. Whereas what we have now, it's kind of a zero-sum game, and the loser is always the patient. And so I think as a profession, we have to acknowledge this, because, the claim has always been problems of access to care. There's always access to care. The problem is, the patients aren't always where the practitioners are. So if we can make this a triple win, there are companies that use large self-insured employers. I shouldn't have said that. They work with large self-insured employers to transfer their patients for, say, a hip replacement to a hospital in Mexico or Costa Rica. They might even fly in a a boarded U.S. surgeon to do the surgery there, and they have twice as much support in a foreign hospital as they do here for a fraction of the cost.
But again, you're gonna make me. Are you trying to get me have a heart attack or a stroke? Are you trying to get my
time do we have?
carotid artery? Because I lived here. I've lived here since 1987, so we're a border country with Mexico. You remember the story of the Alamo, right? That's where the United States stole 40% of Mexico with a gunpoint. And
where we are now.
Yeah, and they're all proud of the story in Texas. I know. Four of my grandkids live in Beeville, and it's like a favorite hometown story.
Right.
Going down there and with guns ablazing and stealing 40% of a country. So my practice right here, you know exactly where I am, across the street from Guadalupe,
Sure.
which has not had a dentist for the whole time I've been here. They have 5,000 people living there that are legal,
Right.
and 15,000 that are illegal. And every 10 years, they can't afford a filling. They can't afford the dentistry. So some very nice man who went to dental school in Mexico comes up in Guadalupe, and he opens up a dental office, and here comes the trusty government.
Right.
And they kidnap him and put him in a cage, and they all this up because what was he doing? He didn't have his paperwork in order. Doesn't that sound like a communist thing? Where are your papers?
Seriously.
Give me your papers. I need to see your papers. They're not in order?
But isn't Guadalupe sovereign territory?
It's forget all the details. Just why? I mean, it's the same thing. The house I bought, $1 million home from this lady. It was so sad. Well, what's wrong? Well, I have brain cancer, and there's a pharmaceutical company in America, and they made this deal, but it's not FDA approved for me. And I told them, well, I just want to try it. Well, they're doing a study. I didn't get on the list, but they sell it to every other country.
Right.
So I found a doctor in Sweden. So I'm gonna sell my house and move to Sweden, and there I can buy the U.S. drug made without. So I understand the need for regulation. So you say, well, we just can't sell anything. Well, why don't you just say this drug is not FDA approved?
Right.
I have a smartphone. I can Google Britney Spears and all the things that you need to do. Why can't I just say, well, it's not FDA approved, but my hematologist and oncologist say, dude, you're going to die.
Right. And
they both told me that the best random chance is to take this drug, not FDA approved. Here's side effects. So I've only got a year to live. That's my decision.
Sure.
But you always show up with a gun, and like Lady Liberty, it's like, oh, she's so honorable. Okay, so she's written laws by lawyers in Congress taking bribes from businessmen, and if you don't do it, she pulls out a 9mm. Right. And kidnaps you and put you in a cage, and you call her Lady Liberty? She's a frightening person. It was kind of like the way, well, I don't want to mix other things with it, but the bottom line is, so the good men at the Arizona State Board of Dental Examiners, who I know, who are elders in their church, and they're all these great men, will hold the holy book and send out a policeman to kidnap you and put you in a cage because you were doing free or low cost $20 dentistry on a poor man because, well, we have to protect you, and you can't start a dental school unless we approve it, and you can't be a dentist until we license you. And well, you're not being my consultant. Like if I went to you as a professional, as a prosthodontist, and I'd say, here's $100 for an exam. Will you tell me what you think I should do?
It's actually my legal responsibility to do it.
But that's not how the government is. The government's like, here's what we recommend, and if you don't do it, I'll kidnap you and put you in a cage. And by the way, to pay for this service, I need to take a third of your money. I just love it when they talk about the income inequality. It's like the people complaining about it have no problem taking a third of your money. But they sure get mad when some billionaire has, 50 billion, which if you look at all the billionaires in the past, they all, the guy who U.S. Steel left his money to build a library at Carnegie in every county. The Rockefeller, it still is funding all this stuff. Bill Gates and Warren Buffett have already put all their money in a trust and are doing more money. But the guys who take a third of your money always point to those guys who actually built you an iPhone, who actually built you a library, actually, it's it's so messed up. But I have faith that I really think the smartphone is going to wake up these dumbasses who believe their whole life, well, I can't make a decision. Isn't there an agency for that? I mean, help me from myself. I'm born a victim. It's like in Arizona, they're trying to pick out a book in the Department of Education in the book for a first grader, and they have to consult with Washington, D.C. You know, if nobody in Arizona can decide what book the first graders should read, maybe we should just close that institution
Maybe
down.
the problem is not the book.
Yeah, I mean, and the kid, when he's reading that book, he's thinking about, I mean, when I read to my grandkids, they're not thinking about the book. They're thinking about frogs and fishing, and you're reading them a book, and they point out in Texas, Daddy, Grandpa, it's a deer. And now we went from reading a book to looking at the deer walking by, you know. But anyway, it's just, it's crazy.
Well, I have some, again, the last few years I've been in an institution that is kind of in some ways a public service, because we do low cost dentistry for people that really need it. And I have definitely seen some people who have had some pretty awful treatment done by unlicensed practitioners. Now, I'm not saying that there's no room for expanding access in that respect, but unfortunately, prohibition never works is the problem. You know, what we need is to shed a little more light on the situation and to give people the opportunity to A, understand what an unlicensed practitioner is, B, you know, just like the ADA didn't want to have hygienists, now we don't want to have anyone who's not a dentist who, you know, doesn't have the holy touch after going to school.
I want to know what you're very cerebral, and I don't. Where does that come from? Because you don't talk about. Whenever you talk about something, it's not like, oh, I never thought of that. Here, I'll just wait. You can tell that you've always thought about all this shit for a long time. Where does that come from?
I don't know. I guess I was raised to question the things that I was told, you know, and to apply critical thinking. And I guess I'm just always intrigued to understand how's it work, you know, to dig deeper. That's the other answer to why did I want to go into prosthodontics. I had questions I wanted to answer that I had no basis of answering. You know.
So come on, you're not getting out of here. I'm going to bar that door till you tell me a dental therapist. What? How do you?
Oh, dental therapy.
How do you
There's no
see this?
there's no controversy for me whatsoever. I think it's silly. You know, what we need is, and you know, whether it's national or local, it doesn't matter to me. Everyone should be working at the top of their license. That's the simple thing. That's all it takes. Hygienists have things that they can certainly do. In some states, they can give local, but they can't give a block.
Quotes. I'm stealing all your quotes.
Hygienists can give all my quotes are stolen, so go for it.
Professionals should always work at the top of their license.
Absolutely, it's the only thing that makes sense. Why would you want to have a? You know, I used to argue with my former employer. Why would you want to have a dentist doing all of your hygiene? It doesn't make sense. You just simply economically, the things that I'm focused on in terms of specialization of services, just like you say, that why should one person try to do it all? It's crazy. So I think, you know, I have friends that work with expanded function assistants, for example, who place their restorations after they prepare. You talk about an access to care boon, that's it right there. You can charge a quarter of the cost if you, well, not a quarter, but you can charge a fraction of the cost if the dentist only has to remove the tissue and then check the final restoration. And by specialization, the dentists get better at preparing because they do it 4 times as much, and the restorative assistants do far more restorations. So they get to the point where they're far better than the average dentist. It's the only thing that makes sense, if you ask me. But again, you run into perceptual issues, right? Suddenly patients want to know, why is someone other than the dentist treating me? And you know, what I wrestled with going into prosthodontics is, unfortunately, that tends to be high-level treatment for very rich people. So, you know, they're paying the best, and just like those longshoremen who don't know anything about dentistry, if all they know is this guy has a degree and she doesn't, even if I tell them she's going to do a better job than I will, they might think that reflects badly on me and go on to the next guy, you know. So unfortunately, institutions and market pressures matter, I think, is what we concluded here.
Ryan, so you know, he used to live across the street from us in Guadalupe, or where did you
Right
live?
there, right across Piedmont in that apartment complex right across the street from the golf course.
So that's Awatuki.
Yeah.
And then you grew up in Kansas.
I did.
Are you-
I've been following you for decades.
When and where did you live in Kansas?
In Overland Park from 88 to 2002.
Damn. Oh my God, that is amazing. So when I said, where does all this come from? You should have said, because I lived in Kansas and Arizona. Aren't all the cerebrals?
Like
or
all
did
the
it come
great-
from Rutgers?
like all
did
the
it come
great
from
men.
Kansas and Arizona or Rutgers?
What Rutgers taught me was how to take a bad situation with a non-compliant patient and a broken chair and make it all work. It was a very valuable education because it taught me a lot of troubleshooting, a lot of problem solving.
Well, my gosh, I am big fan of yours. I think you're just crushing
Feeling
it.
is mutual. I think personally, for my career, you and the things you've done have made a tremendous difference. And when you look at the patients I've touched and have benefited from it, and all the people and all their patients that have benefited from you in this country alone, never mind the free education you're giving out worldwide, I'm very happy to be here and excited to count you as a friend.
Oh man, on that we gotta stop on that note. Let's do that. We should start the 2-man mutual admiration club. We'll be the only 2
Absolutely.
members, and we'll just meet together and admire each other. We'll just
Well,
like,
and there's no majority for one to oppress the other. Someone from Russia, a patient of mine, told me a good joke recently. She said, there's an old Soviet joke. In capitalism, one man oppresses another. In communism, it's the reverse. It's still one man oppressing another. So.
Yeah. But again, to leave on a positive note, because when you're my age and you look at your 5 grandchildren, then you realize that okay, my grandparents are all dead, and my dad and the grandpa. So you realize, that I'm starting to understand this time thing where you can actually run out of time and die. And I am so bullish because when I flip back every 100 years. When you go back 100 years, but it just always gets better. And the games that people played, technology, energy was measured originally in horsepower, right? I mean, it was originally horses when they come out of the combustion engine, they still transferred it to a horsepower. And I think this natural intelligence is done pretty good because 98.5% of all the species are extinct. We're alive. We're not extinct. When you look at hardly any species made it to living 100 years. There's only like a dozen. We checked that one off with a turtle and a tortoise and all these other things. To reach the billion club is very rare. Shit, there's 8 billion of us right now. And this to think that we went from the big legs moving us around in horsepower to then making tools using our arms, and now the most productive thing is just our opposing thumb. And so we got this natural intelligence with this. There's no such thing as artificial intelligence, and I think that's thousands of years away. But
General
we have
intelligence.
augmented intelligence, and our opposing thumb is doing more work than our biceps and quadriceps and glutes ever did. And I just think it's going to be our finest damn century. And the only problem is. That right now, the majority of the world has more faith in the collective institutions at the top than they do the man in the mirror.
Right.
And I'm just like, why do I have to tell everybody, I don't even know you, and I have more faith in you than you do. You don't need a Department of Education. You don't need Barry Sanders helping you pay for something. You got to figure out, how did everybody screw it all up? Well, they regulated the shit out of it because you couldn't read or write. When's the last time you couldn't read or write on your iPhone? When I was born in 62, at 72, my mom went to a garage sale and found our encyclopedias. And they were made in 52. So me and my 5 sisters, we were so excited about this information. I mean, we literally read the books like it was, we had already read the Mary Drew series, or what was it?
Nancy Drew.
Nancy Drew series. And then what was the boy...
Hardy Boys.
Hardy Boys? How do you know this? You're too young.
Pop culture is an amazing tutor.
You're too young to know what this is. And we read the 7 books of the encyclopedias just like they were the Hardy Boys, the Nancy Drew.
Yeah,
and
I was
now,
mad that Aardvark never came back in the end,
And now the average, I don't care if you live in Kansas, Kathmandu, or a canoe, you got Google, you got Wikipedia, you got 75 million pages of updated encyclopedia. Nobody's going to stop the individual. The only problem is I just wonder if I'll live long enough to see the average individual have more faith in themselves than in some other religious institution, business institution, government institution. And the fact that they could not know how the government's abused them for 5,000 years. It's even in business. Look what business. Apple finds out you're their best customer.
Right.
So when they come out with a new iPhone, what do? They make your last charger not work.
Right.
So now the biggest business finding customer is like, oh, do you like me? Am I your favorite company?
I can get away with way
am I
more.
gonna screw you over?
Yeah,
So it's like
absolutely.
the minute they sense trust, it used to be like you had to earn your trust.
And then hold
Now
on to it.
sociopaths, the minute they sense, oh my God, are you trusting me? I'm Mark Zuckerberg of Facebook. Well, I'm going to penalize you for posting a video that was copyrighted as I sell your information to Russia and the Chinese and the communists and people. It's like, my God, I'm old school. So like on Dental Town for 20 years, I'm so old school that for 20 years, us 5 programmers have had a 1-year to-do list on things that you asked us to do. Well, we're so stupid. You said you wanted this, so stupid me. That's what we do. And then you go on Facebook's Instagram. Do the links work? Oh no. We hired people to make sure they can't link. Well, it's a 5-kilometer 5K walk for oral cancer. They have to click here for information. We don't give a shit about your 5K.
Right.
We're trying to sell you another ad.
We don't want to get you off of the platform.
So all the top people, they screw their own customers over more than you. They actually hire people to make shit to screw over the people, giving them the most money. And I'm like, okay, so what about the religion? Did they do anything wrong? I mean, look at the Catholic Church and the pedophile scam. I mean, it's not just the United States. I've lectured
Catholic Church either.
I've lectured in Ireland where this dentist about blew a gasket because they had a guy that was just one of the worst. And when the authorities were gonna close in on him, they moved him to Rome. And guess what Rome did?
I'm sure they hid him and put him with children.
They put him in charge of a all-boy orphanage in Tanzania.
Oh my God! They just gave him bigger victims that couldn't.
In fact, that's what I say
out.
when dentists do something awful and they take their license away. No, they should make him do dentistry without an assistant in the prison, 12 hours a day, 7 days a week. And that would probably scare more dentists to the right. But I don't like to be negative. And I'm not negative. Steve Jobs blew my mind. And yeah, he was a horrible dad. Yeah, he was a horrible father. I'm sorry. When I look, when you're doing a root canal, I don't care about your religion, sexuality, and your skills as a father. I just hope you can do the dentistry right. But I am so bullish. I think this is going to be our finest century. And I think it's guys like you on Dental Town, because you even go to the controversial stuff like you. I don't know if you want me to bring this up or not.
Sure.
I won't do it. But
I'm an open book.
But you talked about what was that?
I was annoyed that the ADA chose as their keynote speaker last year.
I wasn't even going to say I didn't know the ball.
When you think dentistry, you think Marky Mark, right? So they chose Mark Wahlberg as their keynote speaker. The only thing I can see that he's accomplished in his life, and I shouldn't say that, that's overstating it. He has done some charity work since, but mostly what he's done and what he's known for is making a lot of money and making some really dumb movies. But they chose him as the keynote speaker. What they chose to highlight was his charity work. I thought it was very upsetting that my ADA dues, and they now tell me the ADA dues are separate. They don't go toward paying for the keynote speakers.
Oh, yeah.
But we all know money is all fungible. Bothered me is
nice term.
I knew you would like that. But what bothered me is that they're paying this guy to, when he's really contributing nothing to the conversation, but unfortunately he does bring in people who don't care about, little things like dentistry. They're bringing him in despite the fact that he has a track record of multiple convictions for racially motivated attacks on people, Not like we think, but where he was screaming racial slurs as he smashed an old man's head with a stick or, threw rocks at children and that sort of thing. And he was a young man, and I understand that. And he, I certainly hope that's not the same person he is now. But I think we could work a little harder and find someone who makes a little more sense, or celebrate someone who does not have a past that's quite that reprehensible. Maybe that's just me.
And can I ask you about another racially question. Shante Parker is the first Black woman to be class president of Marquette University School of Dentistry in its 125-year history. And someone posted, "Why is this news?" Really?
Well,
What rock were you born under? You missed the story on that?
Well, I'm gonna be an optimist like you and choose to hope that they meant, "Oh, hello, how's it going?" Choose to hope that they meant, "Why is this news? Can't we get past this nonsense already?" Not "Why is this news? Who cares?" But it's part.
Say that again. So you want to get past the "why is this news"?
Well, I hope that by that what they meant was, "Why is this news?" Hopefully, as a society, we've evolved to the point where this should be commonplace, as opposed to "Why is this news?" Because because the past struggle doesn't matter. I hope.
Yeah, and I would say I was very sensitive to sexism growing up. You couldn't miss it because good to see you, man. Our next podcast is
How's it
here.
going?
And,
I know.
everybody knows who you are, man. But my mom, who's the love of my life, and I just took to dinner the other night, and she would put me in jeans and iron patches on the outside. And I could swim. So I lived right on the Arkansas River. And by the way, who are these people that live down by Texas who call their state Arkansas? It's Arkansas. And it's not the Arkansas River either, moron. It's the Arkansas River that goes through Arkansas. There's no Arkansas. And but anyway, it was literally, I mean, I couldn't quite throw a rock in the river from my house, but I could get damn near close. I could swim and fish in that thing 24/7. My sisters were putting dresses. They couldn't get within 10 feet of the edge. And if they just soiled their dress, they'd get in trouble.
Right.
And I was sitting out there, seriously, at 10 years old, wondering, well, what is my wanker thing going to do if I can't swim? Am I supposed to hold on to it as an inflation device? I mean, and they had to be, they couldn't, they were just so regulated. And I could go home with my friend Mark Bordelon or Dave Hornbeck or whatever and spend the night. And, the next day you just tell your mom, "Oh, I didn't come home last night because it was like no deal. But if my sisters would have tried that, oh, they would have been shot. So when people say that girls and guys have been treated differently, it's like, well, yeah, I think that's pretty obvious.
Well, did you ever consider maybe they just didn't care if you washed down the river?
Yeah.
That's a possibility.
And in herd management, because when I grew up in Kansas, a lot of people, that was their degree. What was that degree called in herd management? They were what was it? It was like the big animal husbandry. Good job, Brian. You're another cerebral guy.
You can see why they changed the name of that.
In animal husbandry, you only need one male bull in the herd, and for economics, you'd want all females. So of course, you send the little baby boys off to the to be turned into hamburgers because they can't make a baby. So in herd management, you're absolutely right. You could have sent me down the river. But anyway,
well, it's like
so one last deal on Shante Parker, just to make sure I got it right. She's the first Black woman to be class president of Marquette University. She's just an adorable, amazing person. But when someone says, "Why is this news?" What was your exact answer?
I hope what they're saying is, "Why is this news? Why is this not commonplace?" As opposed to, or at least proportional to the population. How about, as opposed to saying, "Why is this news? Who cares?" I hope.
And racial issues in dentistry, do you see them, observe them? What are your thoughts on those?
Sure. I mean,
because you come from a predominantly Irish family,
exactly, Black Irish.
So does that mean you take Jameson straight, or do you mix it with Dr. Pepper?
I wanted to bring some Redbreast over here, but I figured it was early in the morning.
What's Redbreast?
Oh, it's Irish whiskey.
Huh. Well, he brought the cigars. At least Rod Curthy showed up prepared.
Different vice. Tobacco's not for me.
But
no. Of course you see it. People tend to associate with people that look like them. Obviously, my parents are different. They're weird, and that must be why I'm weird. But for example, there's a practice that I'm looking at buying. Wonderful practice. Current dentist is amazing dentist. He's a prosthodontist. Hands of gold. That intimidates me a little bit, but what intimidates me more than anything, a lot of his patients are, members of his synagogue, and they drive past a lot of prosthodontists to get to him. And I'm wondering, how long of a transition do I need in order to maintain that goodwill? Because I don't even fault people for it. If they have closer links to someone else for one reason or another, whatever matters to them, they may not give you the chance. So yeah, it happens. Just like, I've had black patients saying they want to see a white doctor. I've had black patients saying, I'm so glad to see a black doctor. I've had female patients saying they insist on seeing a male doctor. People, as you often say, are endlessly complex. And
Can I say something?
No. Who do you think
that
you
is so
are?
refreshing to hear you say that. You're a young guy. How old are you?
35.
Can you remember when you were 35?
Oh, it's too long. I've had so many younger doctors who have started a new practice or are going to be starting a new practice, and they'll ask me about it, and there'll be you're talking about a racial conception as far as what people think. There's all kinds of other factors in there, and sometimes they'll look at an area to practice in or to buy a practice or whatever, and they just don't even see these factors,
Right.
and they want to overlook them.
Right.
And nobody knows better than Howard, because he teaches this. Before you make a move, a business move, you better study what the heck what you're getting yourself into, and making sure it's going to be a fit. So I love the fact of what you're saying there, because so many of us dentists, we're not business people. We drill on teeth, and we think, hey, we're good, and we're good, so we should be able to step in this practice, and it's good, it's all going to be roses, and lots of times it's not. So, but kudos to you for thinking that way.
It depends on how ethical you are in marketing. Because I lectured in Israel last month, and there's a huge number of Black African Jews. There's Sephardic Jews. What are they? Mizrahi. But anyway, gosh, in Israel, there's so many African Jews. Could you change the name to Sephardic Dentistry, Queens? Is it going to be in Brooklyn or
The
Queens?
ADA would probably crush me. That's clear.
But yes, people are tribal, and it's funny because in animals you just say they're tribal. But I always have red flag words whenever humans describe what they do, and I say, okay, that's great, but show me this in one other animal. And there's 1.5 million species of animals life, so surely you can connect this behavior to a monkey, orangutan, a mouse, an ant. Like, oh no, it's only our behavior. Okay, then it doesn't exist. But yeah, animals are incredibly tribal, and they're just they always have been. I mean, I've seen videos where the male lion dies and the female just tries to join the one on the other end, and the girls kill her. And you're just there. It's very, very difficult. But hey, thanks a lot for coming by.
My pleasure.
Do you have any prosthodontic questions with the hottest up and coming prosthodontist that I know of?
Oh, I wish I'd heard the whole thing, but I will.
Yeah, you definitely will. Well, and since you bring that up, something I recently started is a website.
Oh, that's
because
right.
a lot of my friends, they're always sending me these text messages. I can't believe this lady agreed to a full mouth rehab, or I'm doing an all-on-6. I've never done it before. Where do I start? So I started a website called prostconsult.com. And again, we are the specialty that wants to speak Greek. No one knows what a prosthodontist is. In fact, there's a great article called "You're a Prosthodontist, You're a What?" It's where somebody interviewed people on the street.
And where does that word come from? So prosthodontist, prosto means
prosthetic
what?
teeth.
Prosto means
replacement teeth.
Artificial.
Yeah.
And odonto, Greek tooth.
Teeth,
So
yeah.
what's prostitute? Prosto, artificial. What's tooth?
I'm going to leave that one to you.
Love. So one makes artificial love, one makes artificial tooth.
But so I was forced to choose a bad spelling among bad options. So Prosth, consult.com.
Now, could you go back and specialize in prostitution?
It's never too late.
It's never too late. So when anybody says the business model to me, because we, how many NDAs have you signed in your lifetime? I mean, non-disclosure agreements. But whenever I always hold up my hand and say, is it faster? Is it easier? Is it higher quality?
Right.
Is it lower cost? Is it
Right.
smaller?
Right.
Like the first combustion engine, steam engine was so big it could only pump water out of flooded coal mines. As it got smaller, it got onto ships and replaced the shipping. When the ships got here, it needed canal building, so it's got to be smaller. I see that when I was in Israel. Several laser companies were showing me their hottest new and upcoming laser. Dude, why is it the size of a refrigerator? See that thing right there, that refrigerator? I mean, what's what do you call that kind of refrigerator?
Dorm fridge.
A dorm fridge. It's like, and then they open up the back because you're seeing it making it. It's all this hollow space, and they would say it exactly wrong. They say, "Well, I think if it's bigger, it justifies more the price."
Some gravitas.
It's like, no, it's actually, it'd be really cool. It's like Dan Fisher's his new laser light curing thing or whatever. His new laser thing, it looks like the size of a pen. Have you seen that one? No. But it's like, yeah, if I was going to pay $50,000 for a laser, I'd love to have it the size of a pen, not a refrigerator. But the other thing that I'd like to add to you and your generation, he's a millennial. He's over.
I apologize in advance.
Anytime we talk, he's in his mind. He's saying, "Okay, boomer," and is just to focus it. That everybody crushing it from 2007 to 2020. It's unadulterated focus on the individual. And everyone else is thinking their brakes on. They pitch an idea and they start saying, well, the legal and the ADA and the association. Dude, they had the game for 5,000 years. Can you just block them out of your mind for 1 second? Everybody that has a hot idea in the last 10 years that's making bank didn't give a shit about the government, the business class, the legal class, the religious class. And so when you do that prosconsult all the time, I want to be your biggest fan. I want to help you do whatever you can. I mean, it's the least I could do for a Sephardic Jew from New York City is just total vision on the individual. No holds barred. This person is afraid of losing a body part. I mean, imagine when you pull out your Q-tip, you just want to see if there's any dirt on it. Well, imagine if you pull out the Q-tip and your whole ear came off, your body coming off, your tooth falling out. So this individual's, and it's going to be spell it.
Prosth. Consult.com.
Prosth. Consult.com.
Right.
And I expect when I go there that it says you may not enter because I have no respect for any place that would accept me as a member.
That's personal. That's just you.
Yeah. I mean, that's why I won't join a country club. If they'll take me, shit, who won't they take? And my God, anybody can get in that place. So when you do prostconsult.com, just please, all breaks off the individual. And if you ever are that little birdie saying, well, what will the ADA say? Well, what will the lawyers say? What will the state board of who gives a shit say? Well, you could get sued, a HIPAA, OSHA. Well, just kill your company tonight.
Right.
Everyone that's crushing it since 2007 realized that this was the birth of the individual, and the next century, the last 5 millennium, that was the top. That was the top. That was from Rome, the church, the government, the legal, the ADA.
The guy with the biggest stick.
Yeah, converging on the individual. And the next century is going to be the individual saying, hey, wait a minute. No, and they're going to have an equilibrium. There's a mathematical space for each side. I mean, it's like, it's a scale, but it's going to, it is going back to equilibrium. So they're going to hang on desperately. Look at the wind deal. We grew up in Kansas. You lived in Kansas. Remember, every farm had a little windmill. Mm-hmm. Well, you notice all the windmill research is for windmills that have 30 feet blades.
Right.
Why are they doing that? Because they're trying to hang on to their utility. And the last thing they want you is to replace that little fan that watered the cows to now watering the house with electricity. Right. So that is your utility company passing laws. I mean, Warren Buffett's even part of a company that just passed law. They're doing everything to keep individual solar from you. Mm-hmm. Because I need to keep my big utility company paying me all this wages. When you talk about income inequality, the two-party binary star Democrat Republican from Abraham Lincoln to today set up all this bullshit.
It's
And
a
I
bureaucracy.
and I
Absolutely.
understand why they did it, because all of us were illiterate and couldn't read or write and believed anything we learned in the one school, whatever our elders told us we believed.
Right.
I mean, my mom even told me a lot of stuff. My mom actually told me it was a falling star. Those were just stars falling. I mean, she told me so much. The tails behind the airplane. Well, they had too much gas in their tank, so they have to let out gas to lower their weight to land. I mean, I'm like this kid, like, wow, shit. You should manage your fuel better. Actually, the college she went to she actually went to Farmers University of Central Kansas, and that's not one of the good ones. Did you catch that joke?
I did not.
Farmers University. There's ASU, U of A, Farmers University of Central Kansas.
I get it. I understand.
F you.
It's not pretty on the degree.
It's look at the word fire truck more closely. And but anyway,
my brother went to the University of Hawaii, and he says, why did I pay all this money for a degree that says
So you will hit a home run if you are any business that can black out 5,000 years in the rearview mirror and just say there's one guy there, and stop making excuses. Well, he'll need me to make the decision for this, and well, I don't want him to do that, or he can't read that, or it can't be transparent. It's got to be opaque. It's got to be, yeah, I know what you're going to do because you've done it for 5,000 years. And all the new billionaires, they've got a new business strategy in mind, and they are just going balls to the wall to the individual. So
you can't be all things to all people, and that's the customer, but it's also the people standing over you and brandishing a big stick.
But religion figured out. My sister, my two older sisters are nuns, and the oldest one, Sister Annie Galway, is fluent in several languages, and she's read all the original works. She doesn't read your St. James version of your Bible. I mean, she reads the text. She reads Aramaic, Hebrew, Greek, all those things like that. And she said that, like Christianity, I mean, the actual scientific stuff is about 20 scrolls, right? And you can, same thing with the oldest religion, which is Hinduism, and you can read the originals. And she said they don't have a single person, place, thing, name, common, and all the great works from the Quran to the Bible to Hinduism, except for the golden rule: treat other people like you want to be treated. And she said, and it reads like plagiarism. I mean, in fact, it's so creepily stolen that some people in the religious world think that's proof of divine intervention. But that's the thing about that individual. It's so easy to aim at him because you're that individual. That guy there is you. And it's me, and it's your mom, and it's your sister, and it's your brother. It's everybody you've ever loved is that individual. And my gosh, if you just aim at him, like on Dental Town, when you tell me on a feature you don't want that, I have empathy. I'm like, oh, I see why you don't want that. So I'm going to do that. We're look at Instagram. Everybody says, well, how come my links don't work? Because we're an asshole, and we just want to. Hey, Tim Cook was the worst. He was the first openly gay CEO, and whenever I typed the F word, he autocorrected it to duck. I mean, it's just a little thing. Like, so I'm supposed to tolerate you being gay, and I'm cool with that. My brother's gay. He's my best friend in life. I love him a lot more than Ryan. But why is he telling me that he's controlling my text? They can't stop controlling others. And it's an animal thing.
On the other hand, I would rather have my phone say duck when I meant fuck than the alternative. I don't want to send a text to an animal husbandry guy and get the wrong idea. Could be the wrong kind of husbandry.
The Kansas guy, like, wow, he's into ducks too. Okay. Well, hey, on that note, thanks for all you've done for Dental Town. Thanks for stopping by. And I'm your biggest fan.
Likewise.